All right. Okay, I think we're live. All right, we're good. So we are officially live. We've got two podcasts being featured today as we look into the upcoming offseason that is very, very young for the New York Mets. So you've got all of Mets Weekly being represented. You've got all of Til Mets Do Us part being represented. Last time that we did this, it was at the trade deadline, I believe. And it was kind of a pivotal moment for the Mets because they obviously had to trade a lot of guys away, build for the future. And now we're at another pivotal moment where it's the beginning of the offseason. And right now, if you look to the roster to your right, there's a lot of work to do. So, Andrew, I'll shift it over to you. How do you feel about, everything that's going on so far? What you liked, hires, stuff like that.
Yeah, obviously it's early in the offseason. You're not going to see all the free agents. We got the first kind of big domino falling. And, of course, it's in a National League East team. But, again, not a crazy shock that Nola stays. But, again, the Mets have been quiet, but, filling the front office. David Stearns building his new cabinet to bring this team back to relevance. You laughing at it. Having a little fun. But, yeah, again, it's early in the offseason. He hasn't done anything to piss anybody off. The guy that should not be named was finally set out and put a bullet in his head. Luis Guillorme's gone. So he's already got two things going well in my book. But again, it is still way too early in the offseason. We're just waiting for that first kind of signing to kind of move in that direction to get moving.
We did have the first big signing. It was DJ Stewart. He's back, a 1-year deal. Frank, shift it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, there were some things that I liked and did not like from this weekend in Metsland. The one thing I did like was bringing in someone from the Houston Astros to do some of your scouting, and that got rave reviews around the league. I thought that was a very smart move. We've talked about a lot that, it's one thing to change a manager or add on some players, but one of the Mets' main weaknesses has been player development. I think that they really need to allocate a lot of resources that department to work on trying to change that trend because, like I've said in every episode, with David Stearns, the thing that always impresses you are all these guys that come out of nowhere on the Milwaukee Brewers, particularly on the pitching side, that they just come in and they're productive players for you, and you never see it from the Mets. And I think that, bringing in Stearns, bringing in a scout from the Astros organization, those little things like that should help get you on track to finally starting to do some of that. And then actually be able to utilize, when you look at a 40-man roster that has 28 guys, you're not going to get 12 big money guys, but you need to find those under the radar pieces to slowly build up that 40-man. And I think that the Mets are, going at about it the right way. The only thing I didn't like for this past weekend is the fact that the immortal Drew Smith is still here. I thought we had finally overcome it. I thought he was finally gone. We were going to be able to celebrate. We got rid of Vogelbach. That was step one, but then, we couldn't cap it off. Drew Smith is still here. $3 million. Can't believe it. How many more games are you going to lose? I mean, how many more games could this guy cost you? I mean, I thought this would have been the final straw. And it's like we've talked about with Jeremy Hefner surviving so many different regimes. Same thing goes for Drew Smith. I mean, how many different managers, front office guys have we had? And Drew Smith remains. And I just don't know what they see. The guy's getting worse. He's been here since, 2018? I mean, it's absolutely insane to me.
Yeah, so for those of you coming over from Til Mets Do Us part, Drew Smith is a very popular topic here, not for the right reasons. John, I'll shift it over to you for the other podcast being represented tonight. What do you think so far of what we've done?
I don't think right now you can be upset with anything. Like you guys have all said thus far, like it's early. So I understand that there's still plenty of work to be done. Like Frank said, there's like 9 people on the 40-man roster. So there is going to be so much for David Stearns and company to do, but everything they've done thus far makes a lot of sense. With the exception of the Drew Smith thing. When I looked at the tender, non-tender, he's the only one that I would have said, why give this guy a contract? In years past, past, Ibby can attest to this, I have defended him, not because I thought he was great, but because I thought he was serviceable. And to Frank's point from a minute ago, he has gotten worse basically every single season. I thought it was a decent shot to just cut bait with him. I think a lot of people were talking about, oh my God, how could they let Guillorme go? And I'm like, have you ever seen Guillorme play baseball? Have you ever looked at the back of Guillorme's baseball card? I like Guillorme. Seems like a fun guy. Seems like a nice guy. He's a defensive wizard. I understand that. He's terrible. Like, if he's the first guy off the bench for your team is bad. We talked about it on our podcast this week. People were like, the bench mob the last 2 years. The bench mob was guys like Luis Guillorme and Tomas Nido. And none of these players are good. None of these players are quality backup players. They may have had quality backup stretches where they were decent, right? But they're not good on winning teams. And there are a lot of holes on this team and they have to fill those holes. But I don't think you just fill them for the sake of doing it, saying you know what, let's tender Guillorme a contract because he's already here. We know what he gives us and we'll see what happens. Maybe we can get somebody better than him. No, just go get somebody better than him. There's a million guys who come off the bench and can switch hit and play defense and they're fast and they do a bunch of things well. He does one thing well. And also, okay, I'm sorry, I'm ranting. I understand that. But for all the talk about how good Guillorme is on defense, does he not make errors in the biggest fucking spots possible last 2 or 3 seasons? There's always been it's a ground ball to second base and it's through Guillorme's legs and the Braves take the lead. So he has to be perfect on defense and he's not. So, I like everything they're doing. And I'm sorry to dump on Luis Guillorme because I don't want his father to tweet at me.
Yeah, I mean, his father is quite a presence, so I don't know how he's taking the news, but for me, I'm okay with letting go of Luis Guillorme. Ibby, what do you think so far? It's pretty early, but what do you think?
Yeah, pretty early. So just to continue John's point real quick, just talking about the likes of the Guillormes and the Nidos and the people that have been on this bench or in this pen or that have been viewed as depth in terms of starting pitching. I put out a tweet the other day just to make it clear. It's just this team needs to get more upside. And you've talked about it in our chat before, Carson. I've heard you guys talk about on your show, just getting younger and getting more upside. It's if we are rolling out, to John's point, the likes of Luis Guillorme coming off the bench first and Tomas Nido's coming in to pinch hit, it's you have a much larger problem at hand. You have to get upside. And to Frank's point before, talk about how we're down to 28 on the 40. It's that's why I'm so excited about this offseason, because it allows Stearns to really, dig in, dive in and create this roster however he wants. And, how much he's going to get, going to be able to accomplish within one offseason is still a question. But I'm glad that we're finally ripping apart what this team has been and trying to, infuse it with newer, better, like I said, stronger upside types of players. Nothing's happened yet, but everything to this point, I'm happy with. Obviously, we just mentioned the likes of Daniel Vogelback no longer being here. Obviously, Mets Twitter can now calm down for 5 minutes before something else bothers them. But thankfully, he's gone, and you can get something better than what he offers. Drew Smith, a whole nother story. But you guys covered that in spades. I won't, beat a dead horse on that one. But to this point, I'm happy with the moves. I'm excited really to see what Stearns does over this entire offseason.
Yep. Stevie Mack in the chat. I just want to say this because it is pretty funny because there's a lot of these guys who come in here and they get 3 hits in one game and and then they completely disappear and they think it's going to continue to sustain. Like Michael Perez, that's a minor league catcher right there. They acquired him.
You didn't love Bro, was Billy McKinney? You weren't a Billy McKinney fan? You didn't like him?
I actually liked Billy McKinney. I thought Billy McKinney had more upside.
Billy McKinney's actually a solid bat, but that's a 4th outfielder, right? On any contending team or whatever.
Or a 5th outfielder.
You can find anybody like that anyway.
He's a replacement level player. Yeah. And I think that's the
I
thing.
actually got to go to his Mets debut. That's one of my proudest moments.
Did you save the
ticket
ticket stub?
His Mets debut.
No,
I don't think I may have. I don't know. I may have it somewhere. But yeah, that was when Jose Peraza was our top hitter, I think. Everybody was hurt. Yeah, it was fun.
Oh, my goodness. It's nice to see them not resting on their laurels, because a team that had objectively this many holes going into the offseason, you would see a situation, and honestly, you probably couldn't argue with it from a certain perspective to say, you know what, let's bring Guillorme back. He's going to be depth. Why are we making more holes? For them to cut down the roster as trim as they have just shows you, one, what the roster was like, two, what a competent baseball person like Stearns thinks of the roster, and three, that they can do some creative stuff to get better. They can find, these undervalued guys or whatever the case may be, make a couple creative trades, some signings here and there, because the guys that they had here, nobody wanted to watch them anymore.
Yeah. And the one last thing I'll do, and then we'll get into like everything. But the one thing I will say is obviously Alex Ramirez being added to the 40-man roster. I know a lot of people were surprised about that, because there were some that were, they thought that, maybe he wouldn't be picked up in the Rule 5 draft or anything. But the fact to see Stearns just say, okay, this is the one guy that I'm putting on the 40-man roster, on a roster that I have cleared out completely. This is the guy that the only guy that I'm putting on the 40-man, when there's some pieces that were Rule 5 eligible that they acquired at the deadline last year. It seemed like he was just going, some of these guys that I acquired, fuck Billy Epler, we're moving on, and that's it. So, and I'm okay with, fuck Billy Epler. I'm fine with that. But, moving on to what it actually is. And now how we're going to do this, I think that we'll just go position by position. We'll talk about what needs to be addressed, the storylines of everything, and, create that discussion going forward. So obviously I want to start with what is going to be the major need, what is going to be the major focus. And I think everybody knows where we're going, and that being starting pitching. Now, here's what we got for the starting pitching. As we all know, Kodai Senga leading the charge, possibly like the only highlight from last year. You have Jose Quintana, who came in a little bit later. He's here for another year. And then after that, lots and lots of question marks. Tyler McGill, up and down throughout the season. Lucchesi came in a little bit late, but he was solid. Jose Budo was okay. And then Vassell, Hamill, and Scott, those are prospects who have yet to make their major league debut. And then you have some free agents there. Nola is just signed with the Phillies, for those of you who don't know. 7 years, $172 million, which I personally would have done. So a lot of angles to go at here, because they have a lot of holes to fill. We'll start off we'll start off like a point of the conversation. I'll give it to John. You can start off with you take the honors.
Okay. Look, everybody loves what Kodai Senga did last year. I think if you're going into the season with him expected to be, your ace, your true ace in terms of like what we had from DeGrom all those years, I think obviously you're doing him and yourself a disservice. Quintana's a good pitcher. I'm happy they didn't trade him at the deadline, because you do need to round out a rotation. After that, obviously the Mets need to go and spend, I think it's Yamamoto or bust. I think he needs to be the guy, but they have to add some other people too. Yamamoto just happens to be the perfect person because he's 25 years old. You can have him for over a decade if he's good. He's already been a stud in Japan, so he makes the most sense. But then, you're going to have to fill out this rotation with some guys who aren't necessarily sexy names. I've thrown out some on our show, and people are like, that guy's not any good, and that guy gives up too many home runs, and I don't like this about. It's like, not everybody is going to be a star. Some of the people that you're going to get, I see here on the side, we have, they're going to talk to Severino. Look, you're going to have to be creative. You're going to have to be smart. Maybe they see something there. 1-year deal, prove it kind of deal, round out the rotation. I've mentioned Giolito. There's no qualifying offer on Giolito. I think he could be a fifth starter. I know he gives up a lot of home runs, but there's some dependability there. There's some reliability. After that, when I look at the names of the players who are actually, might be in the Mets rotation that you have listed here, the one that intrigues me the most, and it's not saying much, is probably Joey Lucchesi. I think Joey Lucchesi can be a fifth starter on a team, but then the Mets are going to have to do better. They're going to have to go get Yamamoto plus. It's going to have to be Yamamoto and get us Montgomery, or Yamamoto and shock everybody and get, I don't know, Sonny Gray or Blake Snell. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's going to have to be that level, because I think then Lucchesi is more of a fifth starter guy. I don't think he's a 4 on a good team. I don't think he's certainly not a 3. So, the Mets need to be creative, but right now it looks ugly, and the starting pitching had a lot better names last year, but it was still ugly, and it tanked the season. The offense wasn't good, but the starting pitching was the reason why the Mets were as bad as they were. So they have a lot of work to do.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Another guy that I'll obviously mention. Yamamoto is obviously the top guy, but I'm going to say this name wrong, but the guy next to him right now on our graphic, Imanaga, I believe so. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but I've been able to watch a lot on him. In my opinion, better fastball than Yamamoto. But other than that, I think that he's another guy that you can possibly look into. But I think Yamamoto is going to be their main priority. Ibby, you want to add anything here?
I mean, to continue what John was saying before, also just looking at the pitching, obviously beyond Senga and Quintana, so many question marks. The one thing I've been saying on our show, and I'll echo it here, is when this team goes into a market like this, I keep on saying that they have to hunt and find innings. If there's one thing that killed this team last year, was the fact that they had absolutely nobody providing innings, which killed the bullpen. And you're going into a season now, obviously a lot of work will be done. It's not going to go in as is. They're going to get new people within that bullpen, but you still need to get innings to protect whatever bullpen it is that you try to assemble. I think it's safe to say that this bullpen this previous year was burnt out by the time May rolled around. There was nothing there, and it was finished. So when I look at this list, I look at names that, they aren't the prettiest. Yes, I could talk about first the Eduardo Rodriguez's of the world, who averaged like 185 innings pitched in his, throughout his career. I could look at Jordan Montgomery, averages about 180 innings pitched in his career. I can look at Kyle Gibson. Yeah, he gives up home runs, but the guy averages 190 innings pitched in a given year. This team needs to find innings. Yes, I believe that Yamamoto should be the number one target, the guy that they should go after. But in the event, and we do live in a world where it might not happen, if they don't get him, I think they are going to attack the guys that do provide those innings, because, again, you're only as good as far as the starter will go. And I know that we live in a time where, the starter is only going 5-6 innings as it is, but you still got to get there. So this team needs innings. So that's why I think names like that are the ones that Mets fans should familiarize themselves with, because you're not always going to get a superstar.
Yeah. Now, Andrew and I did a video about our offseason checklist. I think it was a week ago, 2 weeks ago, something around there. And we talked about the rotation and how the Mets need to address it to pair another ace or pair up another frontline arm with Kodai Senga, and then also search for a legitimate number 3 starter. And in any situation, they have to sign one and trade for the other. Like that was the kind of the plan that we had going on there. Andrew, you want to add a little bit to that?
Yeah, and even signing 2 and trading for 1, you have the prospect capital, and that's obviously been built up post deadline. But again, you have the money with Cohen. But yeah, if you can go out and let's say you get Yamamoto, and you still have the same question marks we had about Senga last year. Yes, Senga went and exceeded everybody's expectation. Will lightning strike twice again? So even if let's say you do get Yamamoto, you need that number 3 that can give you the innings, because again, he's used to pitching once every week compared to obviously maybe potentially pitching twice a week. It's the same question we brought up with Senga. You're going to have to bring it up here. And again, can it translate? So again, if you're putting all your faith and all your money in Yamamoto, you have to have some backup plans. And again, like the 4 and 5s, attack those guys. And you can use that benefit of maybe making Lucchesi and McGill and all those guys 7, 8, 9 of your depth instead of every year it seems like 6, 7, right? They give you 5 guys and then there's your guy. McGill, and then Lucchesi and whatever. You have the financial ability to say, hey, Giolito, Gibson, and pick a trade pick. Try to find a low risk kind of guy. Again, I brought up Brady Singer, brought him up before. He's not the greatest, but in my 5, that's a guy, you can get probably cheap. The Royals have a horrible farm system. The Mets have, some prospects that they could use. Obviously, they're not winning anytime soon. But again, maybe Shane Bieber in that 3 spot. We brought that up. Mitch Keller from the Pirates. I don't see either of them as aces. But if you're telling me they're my number 3, I think now we're starting to have a conversation. That's a pretty good rotation. If obviously have Senga 1, and then let's say Yamamoto at the 2, and then you can go Mitch Keller or go in. We brought up Joe Musgrove with San Diego. We'll see if that's a possibility. They're moving money. We've said that on a few podcasts. So there's plenty of guys you can look. And again, with the offseason, there could be guys that we don't even think about right now who could be available and get traded. We would see it every year. So in pitching, there's always a heavy market. Again, there's a lot of quality and quantity in the free agent market, and then the trade market's always going to be active too. So again, this is where you got to put 2 to 3, maybe even 4 guys if you do get Yamamoto, and maybe you do think of a 6-man rotation, meaning you have to add another starter, which we saw Senga was better, once a week. And if you're going to get Yamamoto, then you need to add 4 starters. That's more money you have to, and maybe trade assets you have to get to build the rest of that rotation.
I think that makes a ton of sense, honestly. And Aaron in the comments, this is live. Is this pre-recorded or actually live? It's live. You can tell because I'm reading it, and then Carson brought it up.
I was actually going to mess with him, but I was going to say we're all AIs and all in a simulation. Frank already beat me to the punchline in the chat, so
I'm on top of it. Don't worry, I'm watching it.
I will say I've always really loved Tyler Glasnow. I think he's a really quality player. I said the Mets should have traded for him last season before they made some of the moves that they did. Like obviously, they went in a completely different direction in the offseason. But I love Glasnow. I think he makes a ton of sense. And I actually like Snell better than I think some people do. But I think what's going to happen is if the Mets get Yamamoto, they're not going to get Snell. I think if Yamamoto goes somewhere else, I think they might pivot to Snell. I think Snell is a decent 2 to 3. I think he's going to get paid like he's better than that. But I do think Snell is a really good pitcher.
Yeah, we've talked about Snell a few times on our podcast. The mixture between Snell and New York, I just don't really think that it would work out if he were to pitch like crap here. And he's had some blow-ups before. And the personality, I don't know if it would be the greatest mix or anything, but of course, if you're bringing in talent, you're bringing in talent. If they want to pivot to Snell, they could, but one thing that I'm expecting the Mets to do is obviously go after Jordan Yamamoto. Yeah, that's exactly who I was going to say. Yoshi Yamamoto, got that guy on the brain. You go after Yoshi Yamamoto, and if they don't end up getting him, I think that they go directly to the trade market to pair up somebody with Senga, whether that is Burns or Glasnow. If you consider Dylan Cease an ace, if there's a possibility where they get somebody who's a frontline starter on the trade market, they have the ammo to do it because they got it from the trade deadline. Now, the other thing I do want to bring up, obviously, is Yamamoto having the advantage that he does have, being 25, and he's obviously going to get a long-term deal. I was talking about this with a few Mets fans earlier. If he wanted 10 years, would you be willing to do that? Frank, you haven't. I don't think I've pointed to you yet. So what
that's
about
a
that?
good question. It's always tough. I mean, as you know, I'm never a big years guy. I always prefer money wise. 10-year deals, I'm not against it to 25-year-old players, but when it's a pitcher, that's a little interesting. I think that 10 years with a pitcher, it'd be kind of unprecedented, to be honest with you. I mean, you don't really see something like that. But then again, you don't really have 25-year-old starting pitchers available in free agency. So there is that element that goes with it as well. If we're going to do 10 years, kind of like Aaron said, there's got to be some opt-outs. There's got to be some terms that, like, he has to meet an innings requirement to get other bonuses and make it, a mutual or a player, team options, things like that. It would have to be creative. You can't do like the deal that the Phillies did with Nola, no opt-out, all this craziness that they gave him. I mean, that's the thing that concerns me the most. I think, we talk about setting the market, and that's always a goal of agents and players. I want to beat what this guy got. I want to beat what that guy got. That's what it's all about when it comes to these players. And you saw the first domino fall with Aaron Nola getting 7 years. You got to think that Blake Snell is going to want close to 7 years as well, which, like some guys have talked about in the comments, Blake Snell is too inconsistent and too streaky to give 7 years. I would be totally against that, even 6 years, whatever like that. Snell, he has had some good moments. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, then the guy just won the Cy Young after all. So you'd be like, oh, let's go get the guy that just won the Cy Young. But, a lot of things could happen. He pitched well with Gary Sanchez. We talked about Snell and his personality. How would that fit in New York? And when he has his starts where he walks 4 guys, 5 guys, and the boos rain down on him. How would Snell be able to handle something like that? So he has so many question marks that, to me, I'm with Andrew, whereas, like, if you don't get Yamamoto, don't overspend on anybody in free agency if you don't love them. Focus that on the trade market. And I talked about this when the Mets got Bassett, because at the time, the starting pitching free agent market wasn't too great. And I always say, don't settle. Go get the guy that you want. And if that means you have to go in the trade market to do it, then that's what you have to do. But it's not just that the Mets need 1 or 2 starters like we talked about. They need quite a few. So that's why, to me, I got to look at the guys who are under 30. Guy like a Tyler Mahle, who this year was his first year being injured. I've talked about him for years. Had a guy been made every single start, and he played in Cincinnati. It's off ballpark. But you got to look at the guys that are young. A Lucas Giolito, 29. I want to stay sub 30 because we talked about so much the past few years. You get your Verlander, you get your Scherzer, guys that are 40 years old, and you know what's going to happen. So like we've said, we want to see the Mets aim upside. We want to see them aim younger. So I would be, first of all, like everyone, looking at Yamamoto. That doesn't work. Obviously, Corbin Burns is a high priority to me. Tyler Glasnow, love him. I'll take a flyer on Dylan Cease. And like Andrew's talked about, like we've talked about, if Musgrove's a salary dump, I'm okay with that too. A strict salary dump. Hold on to our prospect capital, maybe for something else. But then again, you got to look at a guy who also just became available, Dakota Hudson, also 29 years old. You got to be looking at those younger pieces. And the other guy who he wouldn't help you this year, but I'm all for Brandon Woodruff. He's out this year. Get him to come back next year. Milwaukee guy, Stearns connection. I've seen what Brandon Woodruff could do when he's healthy. If you could get him on a really good deal, I'm all for that because, that's what these really good organizations do. The Dodgers do it all the time. Rays do it all the time. Those 2-year deals where first year guy's not there, but then next year the guy does big things for you. You got to be playing the long game as well. So that's the way I see it. I don't want, as much as I love Seth Lugo, I don't want to reunite with him. I don't want to reunite with Michael Wacha. I want to stay from a lot of these Stroman. We've been there. No, thank you. I don't want any of that. And even Luis Severino, I'm not high on him at all, to be honest with you. It's been quite a few years since he actually was an all-star. I mean, he's a guy who's been on a downward trajectory, a lot of injuries, and even the good Severino, the one who was in the playoffs for the Yankees, he'd only give up a few runs, but he only pitched you 4 innings because it took him 100 pitches to do it. So it's like even his good starts, and like we've talked about, the Mets don't have the bullpen to get away with a guy that only gives you 4 innings. So, they have to work on, and like we said, those innings years, the Kyle Gibsons, guys like that. That's going to be so important with the current bullpen that they have right now. Like we've said, you only have Edwin Diaz, Brooks Raley, and right now Drew frickin' Smith as the guys who are assigned to your bullpen. So you don't really have the luxury of getting starters that only give you a few innings. So, I mean, that's the way that I would definitely approach it. I mean, even Sonny Gray, I'd consider it. His age, I don't love, and I'm not giving him the 7 years, 6 years, but I think Sonny Gray, he's worth a shot because it's not a New York thing. He had that whole comment about the Yankees where he said they had me throwing my breaking ball more than I wanted to. I couldn't command my slider. So I think that Sonny Gray, if you actually let him do what he wants, I think he could actually be pretty productive for it. We saw what he did in Cincinnati and Minnesota. I think he's definitely done a solid job. So that's kind of the way I would approach this whole thing. And again, as many arms as possible because I'm with all you guys. You can't be relying on McGill, and I like what I saw from Lucchesi, but those guys, they've got so many opportunities that you really got to go for the depth approach, go for the quantity approach. I would like to see the Mets finally do that. They've always been so top-heavy, especially in starting pitching. I want to see something different this time with Stearns.
Frank, you snuck it in there. So Frank About Sports does not want a Seth Lugo reunion?
Yeah, no, I mean, he's damaged goods at this point. I mean, I can't believe that. This was a guy we talked about.
Wow.
Damage in the elbow. He couldn't pitch 2 innings for the Mets anymore out of the bullpen. Then this guy starts throwing 120 pitches with the Padres. I mean, what voodoo magic did they do there? Let it happen for the Mets. Yeah, right. I mean, it doesn't work that way. So we've been far too many
Preller works a lot of magic. So we all know that.
Look,
plays video games, red flag. Yeah, I have 2 co-hosts who play video games. They're huge red flags. Let's see what else we got here. which is why they should 100%. Yeah. So I would definitely, obviously, I would see Yamamoto as the priority here. I think that it's a better long-term investment, possibly a better investment than Senga. Like, I think that this guy will definitely age better than Senga. He doesn't throw as hard as Senga, obviously, but the main thing about him is he has the greatest command I think I've ever seen in my life. So this is like the 100% guy that they need to go after.
He doesn't have a ghost in his arsenal, so I mean,
he doesn't have a ghost, but he can make his fastball run, cut, and sink. So I'll definitely take that. I mean, I've probably watched at least, I don't know, a combined 12 hours of Yamamoto film. I don't know. He doesn't miss. He does not miss. You give him the intended target, he does not miss. Like, he does not leave anything over the plate. Can't say that about anybody on this depth chart right now. Besides Senga, I guess. What was the other thing that I wanted to bring up with this, and then we'll move on? I don't know. Oh, all right.
I do think 10. Well, I think 10 years for Yamamoto is too much. It's not that.
It is
25 years.
Yeah.
25 years old.
Yeah.
Absolutely 10 years. But like Frank said, pitcher is tricky. And also, let's not forget that some guys come over here from Japan and they are unpitchable. I don't think that's going to happen based on everything you're saying. Like, it's true. He doesn't miss. He's got great stuff, but that's so much. That is so much to invest in somebody who has never pitched in the major leagues. To me, that absolutely matters. And, you've got guys that come over here that are, they're aces in Japan and they're okay. They're good, right? Like Daisuke had some good years. He was never the same guy. I also understand he didn't come over at 25, but that 10 years with no opt-outs, like a 10-year deal scares the hell out of me. If you're giving him 10 years with an opt-out after 4 and an opt-out after 6 or whatever it is, then sure, then I'll do that. Because if he's great, he's going to opt out, and then you figure it out. But if it was a 10-year deal straight away, absolutely not.
Oh yeah, this is another option, but I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say no. I don't know about everybody else here.
Yeah, we're not revisiting that either.
Trevor Bauer's
listen.
Shit.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. I was gonna dance around it, but John,
not a fucking chance. No,
I've said it so many times to Ibby on our show. Absolutely not. I would rather the Mets win 70 games than sign Trevor Bauer. Seriously,
I think it's just no matter what, it's a distraction.
Yes,
Trevor Bauer.
Don't need
it.
Exactly.
No matter what.
Don't need it.
He would never fit in New York ever. I mean, especially after what
he almost did. He almost did. It almost happened.
Thanks, Bob.
And then it didn't. Dodged a bullet, I guess.
Big time bullet.
Big time bullet. Yeah. Obviously, we hinted to I do want to move to the bullpen because let's just continue with the pitching. The bullpen, I think, is even more of a disaster, in my opinion, to be honest, because right now you have two legitimate starters right now. You have two legitimate bullpen arms and whatever you want to call Drew Smith, I guess. But then you have a depth chart that you're looking at right here that has a lot of, I don't want to say just minor league arms. And then you have a few guys with upside who are always hurt. And then you have some, like we were talking about in the Til Mets Do Us part chat, the Sarah McLaughlin over here and Nolan Clenny and Paul Gervais, who I know that a lot of minor league people like a lot. They talk about him a lot, but I don't think he's anything special. And then Nate, the infamous Nate Lavender, who, believe it or not, is a celebrity here for no goddamn reason. Let's Frank, I'll go right back to you on the bullpen because are you giving Hader the Diaz contract? What do you think?
I would not. I mean, I think I've made my point pretty clear on that. Bullpen is always the toughest one to figure out. We talk about guys may have a great year last year. It looks like a good deal on paper, and then they turn out to be a disaster the very next year. I'm all for the Mets making trades to help fix their starting rotation. I do not want to make trades for the bullpen. I think, again, that is far too risky. You know who I'm going to be looking at. I don't care how old this guy is because he's just, this guy gets better with time. He's so interesting. Chris Martin. I mean, this guy right here, he stays not walking batters, keeping the ball in the ballpark, and putting together good year after good year after good year, no matter what team he goes. And I think he's a guy that he's not going to cost you the Josh Hader money, the Edwin Diaz money. He's going to be a solid guy for you, and you need that. I mean, he's a guy who's healthy, and he gets the job done every single year. So I would be looking at guys more of that role. I mean, are the Mets actually going to get Andrew Chafin this time around? I mean, have we talked about that? How many years in a row now? So
they got their lefty. I think they got their lefty.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, you got Brooks Raley. There's plenty of names that are available. Some that were more enticing a few years ago, guys like Liam Hendricks and guys like that. I mean, it looks like a decent list, but I mean, some of these guys, they have their struggles. I mean, look at Aaron Loop. I mean, I wanted the Mets to keep him, and then he turned out to be a disaster. So you never really can know. I think, I'm going to have to borrow what Andrew always says about the bullpen. You got to be going 1-year deals on these guys. I mean, it's just too much worth the risk. No 3-year deals. I mean, if it's a 2, it's got to be a team option or something like that, or mutual. I mean, that's just the way I would approach it. And again, I'd be trying to aim younger. I mean, I don't want the guys that are too old other than Chris Martin. On that, I'd be trying to look at the younger guys who have more upside. As far as Hader, I just don't think I feel like the Mets just have bigger needs right now than Josh Hader, and I think Josh Hader is going to cost them a lot of money. He's going to want the closer role, and we always know that's a big thing in these free agency discussions, which other teams are going to be able to offer, and the Mets are not.
He's also a piece of shit.
Yeah. So I mean, you also have that to figure out. But again, this one's always a lot tougher. So I'd be trying to make it more of the safe route. And again, this is what David Stearns does. I mean, he's good at just finding these relievers that he either fixes guys who were struggling, who used to be good, or they just have no names who come through. And I'm counting on him to do that again because for anybody, it's just a crapshoot when it comes to the bullpen. You never could really predict who's going to have the good year, the up year, the down year, be consistent. You really never could know. So for them, I don't want them to overspend in this department. Again, I'd rather them take that quantity approach, still aiming younger, where guys have more upside that they could tap into and actually figure something out and get the most out of them.
Frank, I put him on the graphic, and you didn't even mention him. You didn't mention the unmentionable. I put him on the graphic for you.
For Kimbrel?
You think I put him on the graphic for me? I mean, come on. For those of you who don't know who we're talking about, we're going to keep it in silence. Ibby, I'll go to you for this one. What do you think about this bullpen so far? It looks so elite, in my opinion. If you want to rebuttal that.
No, I mean to continue your original point when you were saying it just seems like there's a lot of minor leaguers in this bullpen. I think back to a conversation you guys had on your show a while back when you were doing, I think you were doing like mock trades and stuff, and you were talking about just trying to get, again, what we're talking about now, more upside. And the fact that this team in this bullpen, I talked about on our show as well, this bullpen for the longest time outside of an Edwin Diaz, when it comes to stuff in general and throwing the ball hard, this team lacks it. Like when you see everyone else roll out bullpens where and I'm not just talking about the pitching factories of the Rays and Cleveland and San Francisco now and the Astros. Like, yes, you have those teams, but when I see a majority of teams roll out guys that are throwing 98, 99 with movement, it's sharp, it breaks, like everything along those lines. And then I got to watch Adam Ottavino throwing frisbees. Like it's a little bit frustrating when I see everyone else developing pitching. And that's the other thing that's the problem here. It's not healthy for a team, for a franchise to always have to dive head first into an offseason, especially for a specific spot, this being the bullpen, and try to rework the entire thing. The fact that this team is not developing arms at the same time is a problem. But the biggest thing is, yes, it has to be more so a quantity approach right now. And I'm more willing to take the risk on finding guys with upside and letting them go and seeing what happens as opposed to settling. Yes, you have to have those guys in there that provide what you know. And I'm not saying like just go out there and get a bunch of no names and hope for the best. Yes, you're going to find those stabilizing types of arms that have done it before, but you have to get guys that throw harder. You have to have guys that are younger. This team has lacked for the longest time. That is the biggest thing for me and what I want to see Stearns do. We've seen him make bullpens before, create guys, find guys. That's what needs to happen here. The talent just overall is down. It needs to be brought up.
Ibby knows what I'm going to say. People have said it in the comments. There are 2 words for this bullpen: arm talent. The person that I am looking at, if Yamamoto is the most important potential free agent signing of the Mets, I could make a case that the second most important player for them to sign is Jordan Hicks. He's 27 years old. He throws over 100 miles an hour. I understand there's some stuff with his control and some of the peripherals. I'm not saying he is a cure-all. It would just be nice to see somebody else come out of the bullpen who is not named Edwin Diaz, who has the stuff to just beat you, who can just say, you know what, and I'm just going to rear back and I'm going to throw the ball hard. And he's got no qualifying offer attached to him because he was traded mid-season. I think there's a lot. The fact that he, is not the guy that the Cardinals thought was going to be, like when he burst on the scene, the fact that he's a little less than that in terms of the numbers that he's put up in his career, I think he could be had for a decent deal. I would much rather spend money on him than, say, a Josh Hader. We already have a closer. You said it eloquently. Hader's also a piece of shit. But, the Mets are also not one player away. The Mets are not build a super bullpen with 2 closers at the back end away from winning a World Series. Go get some depth. I think Frank made a lot of great points. The one thing I would a little bit of a rebuttal on that is I am willing to trade something to get a bullpen piece, but I mean a minor piece. I mean kind of combining Frank's idea and Ibby's idea of hey, if there's a guy out there who's being undervalued that's in the middle of somebody's bullpen somewhere, I'll trade some infielder to get him. I'll make that deal to fine. Go get a value piece.
Yeah. I want to address this list right here, and I mean this in the utmost respectful way possible. If Jose Budo is in my bullpen, take me to the nearest bridge. That's all I can say. But Andrew, anything you want to add here? I know Jordan Hicks, you Cardinals. I know you have a connection.
Yeah, and I think Hicks is going to get into the problem what Frank doesn't want to do because I think people see that upside arm, and definitely as a 27-year-old, he's going to get more than probably 3 years. It's going to be a 3, maybe even a 4-year deal because people would see that upside of, hey, this guy's throwing 102-mile-an-hour sinkers, moving, all that crap. So then you're getting into that conversation with the reliever. But I think everybody said the stuff part. Can we get some out besides Edwin Diaz? I think we might have the blandest bullpen just of energy. We made this joke, and it's just a bunch of white guys that don't show any emotion. I want my bullpen to be a bunch of fiery guys. So I'm looking at guys like Joe Kelly, Ryan Stanek, Robert Stevenson.
Ryan Stanek, yes.
Robert Stevenson.
Go on.
Stay away from David Robertson. We saw this again. We saw this with Adam Ottavino 2.0. But I do want his role filled again as that emergency closer. And again, keeping to the stuff and attitude, I would look at Hendricks at I think Carson, you put it out. A 2-year deal with a guaranteed 1 year, $12 million and a mutual option for the second year. Because that's the type of guy, again, knock on wood, if Edwin Diaz comes back, and let's say he's not not the greatest closer ever again. And let's say there is some regression coming off the injury, you have a backup plan of a guy who could pitch in the 9th inning and also as a setup role if everything goes right. Diaz is back, Hendricks in the 8th, who's done it before. Obviously you've seen some good obviously the White Sox. And the age, you've seen them both in the setup and the closure role. But you have, again, you're backed up just in case. Again, you're coming off Diaz. We're all expecting Diaz coming back perfect. He is coming off of a leg injury. Yes, thankfully it's not an arm. But there's a chance that he maybe regresses a little bit. And, hey, you have some insurance in that 9th inning as well as deepening that pen. And I know you guys brought up the young arm thing. That's not going to happen in year 1. I think he goes that veteran route this year to build that for 2 years down the line. Then you get your Joel Pompez like the Brewers always do. I think you'll start to see moves of they got this single A arm that like nobody knows about, and then 2 years from now, then you'll get him. So I think he might go the veteran approach this year, and then still try to find those guys in like type of trades. But I think he maybe goes a little more veteran heavy if they're trying to compete this year.
I love Liam Hendricks. I love Ryan Stanek. I think both of those guys make a ton of sense. Jordan Hicks, I would do with a 3-year deal for a guy with that age and that arm talent. I would do it. I like to see a little bit of maybe continuity in the bullpen, dare I say it? You know what I mean? And it's crazy because Ibby mentioned like that Tampa Bay is like a factory. And you guys said like there's all these generic white guys in our bullpen. It's true, but like there are guys every year. Like I watch a lot of baseball. I have the package. I'll watch Rays games, and I'm like, I never heard of this guy. The Rays bring in more creative player from MLB The Show people that I've never seen, never heard of, and the guy's like, oh yeah, he throws 103. He's got a cutter.
With cut, yeah.
To us, it's a novelty. Like when we saw Bryce Montes de Oca coming through the system, we're like, oh, I can't wait for this guy. I can't wait for this guy. Everybody, these other organizations have like 7 other Bryce Montes de Ocas. This guy gets hurt, replace him with another one. Like that's the thing.
Yeah.
I need it to not be a novelty. I need it to be like something that is
the
more
norm.
common.
Yeah.
Yeah, it needs to be. Yeah. It needs to be normal. Like they have a few pieces they can go out and get. You know, maybe there is a few that they maybe trade for, but the fact that you have this high profile velocity coming out throughout the entire league, and then you see just the Mets sitting with these guys, low 90s, mid changeup, like it sucks. Like it's just not good. I understand. It's like you're looking at it, and you know you get the guys that you can, and they've put up this type of history. Not to mention, even if you do bring in some of these older guys who still do throw hard, there's been a few instances where they come over to the Mets and their velocity's gone. Dellin Betances, let's not forget that one. I mean, like, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the Mets. I don't know if it's the Mets uniform. I don't know if it's the Mets, just sewage plan at Citi Field. I don't know what it is, but for some reason, there's some times where they just lose velocity, they lose stuff, they lose that ability to be explosive. Hasn't happened with Edwin Diaz yet. Hopefully, when he comes back, it's a lot.
Could be Jeremy Hefner.
Yeah, it could be Jeremy Hefner.
Could be.
No, they kept him.
I'm just saying. Yeah. I know you and I agree on this. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
there's not I cannot find a single person that Jeremy Hefner has objectively made better. But that's
Yeah. And we've given him plenty of chances for that. I mean, we're still talking about pitching here. He's coming back as well. Did we talk about this last week? I don't on our show. I don't even know.
Did we?
I forget.
I don't think we did. Oh, whatever.
Did we? I don't know.
Nope.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it for so long. I mean, who has he made better? Like anybody who has really been like somewhat of a Hefner project or has succeed out of the bullpen they've had success before, or they were expected to be good. Like everyone talks about Taijuan Walker. He was a top prospect. I mean, he was he was expected to be good.
Yeah.
These other organizations, they come in here, they bring these guys out of nowhere. This guy was waiting tables last week. Look at that. I'm so sick of the Mets just plugging in these parts of, this guy's a name, and he's a guy with a heartbeat and a pulse. So we're going to put him out there in this high leverage situation. And I don't want to see that anymore.
I very much agree. And I don't want to hear anybody say that Hefner made Edwin Diaz better after the collapse that once. You're going to just forget about the fact that before Edwin Diaz had a historically great season with us, he had a historically great season in Seattle. Like, we're just going to forget about that. And then he came over here and there was a juiced ball and he couldn't throw a slider. We're going to just forget about all that. We're going to give Hefner credit. Come on.
Yeah, he fixed him.
Yeah,
fixed
100%.
Him mentally. He got rid of all the fans. He created coronavirus. He got rid of all the fans. And, he got him back into that mental state where he's an elite reliever. Like Adam Ottavino gets brought up. He's had a great career. I mean, Aaron Loop was a little bit of established before he came here. I mean, it's just, I don't see it, but if Stearns sees something in Hefner. I'll trust him. I'll say, I'll but it's like,
give him one more
I'll
shot.
trust him, but you can't not expect me to be skeptical about this, because we have seen him here for 4 years, and there's been arms that have come in here. They have not gotten better. In fact, they have gotten either worse or they've stayed the same, whether they bring them in or they were still in the organization. I mean, that's literally just how the pitching has gone for a long time. And Fujinami was somebody that they brought him up in the chat. I would love to see the Mets try and go after him. Of course, that's like more of a project arm. Of course, that would not be the top guy to bring in. But again, they have 6 current spots pretty much open. I don't know if they consider Drew Smith as somebody that they're going to put into the bullpen. We heard that they were open to trading him. I don't know if that was something with the Rule 5, not the Rule 5, the what is it called? The tender deadline non-tender. Or whatever it was. Yeah, the non-tender deadline. If they were just trying to move him, because, we saw some teams doing trades, trying to get things back before they just non-tender them from nothing. So we'll see what happens. I mean, there are some guys on this list that we have on here. Sean Reed-Foley, I actually do think that he could be good, but he needs to be healthy. Grant Hartwig is a great arm. Bryce Montes de Oca, he is not going to be back at the beginning of the season. Obviously, health is going to be a problem for him throughout his entire career. Who is Diaz in the trade options? Alexis Diaz.
I mean,
I
think
want to ask you guys. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I was just going to say who in here, and you kind of hit on one for me, Carson. Outside of Edwin Diaz and Brooks Raley, is there any other name on here in the current bullpen that you guys would be happy with? For me, it's Sean Reed-Foley. I do think he has good stuff, but I'm not in like a prominent role, but I think he could be in the bullpen.
Reed-Foley projects well. I do like him a lot, but
I admit even that one's a stretch. That's why I'm asking you guys. Is there anybody else? Like everybody else, you could cut them tomorrow and I'd be fine.
Yeah.
Who the hell is Trey McLaughlin? Who the fuck? I don't even know who that is.
Listen, we went from Fangraphs and we listed them out.
That's not a human being. Like that's not a player.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've been ignoring. I keep forgetting. Yariel Rodriguez. This is a guy that I really want them to go after. They have scouted him. Yeah. That's the guy from the Cuban team on from the WBC. High spin rate slider, high 90s stuff. That is, I think he projects as they say that he could be a starter, but
I think he's better as a reliever.
He's like 2 pitches. He looks like a 2-pitch guy to me. So I don't know. I would definitely go after that as well. I would go full on internationally. I don't think you can really count anybody internationally out at all. To be honest, I mean we've seen WBC. There's a lot of talent everywhere, and that's the thing.
Well, I think there's one arm I think we're all kind of underrating, and we haven't heard from a while, but I think Matt Allen is still an elite arm, and I think he could be the next future closer to the franchise. He's a top prospect for a reason. Is he even alive? Like at this point,
Mets fans have such an attachment to Brody Van Wegen in draft picks. I just don't
I saw that tweet
understand
today.
it. Like,
everybody knows the Mets should sign Matt Harvey out of retirement, and he should be the closer. Yep. Everybody knows that's the recipe for success.
Oh, boy.
Could he be a better pitching coach than Jeremy Hefner? I guess only time will tell. But I just Matt Allen's been fantastic. 10 innings. Yeah, his entire 10 career. Innings 10 innings in minor leagues.
Yeah, about 10 years. So
10 innings in 10 years. There you go. I'm sure there's going to be another surgery announced for him.
Efficient, very efficient.
But we still got to put him in the top 10 prospects because that's upside. Remember.
Still got to put him in there. The next ace.
Thankfully, he's out.
Yeah, he's out of our top 30. That's the thing. Mets fans are seeing this guy as the next ace, the next Zach Wheeler to come in here. The next.
No, remember he was the Jacob deGrom arc. Remember, this was the deGrom arc.
He got hurt. He's going to come in here.
He got hurt. Exactly. It was great in those comment sections. Gotta love it.
Jesus Christ. I mean, the guy got the highest contract a third-round pick has ever gotten, and he's pitched 10 innings in the last, 4 years? I mean, for God's sake. give it up already. Why are we talking about Matt Allen? Okay.
I actually think that
this is the problem. People ask us why we don't stream anymore. This guy right next to me. That's why we don't stream, because this guy's just always just saying stupid shit and off tracking me. Okay. All right. Let's go to a more pivotal. I want to go to a
amazing.
What happened?
Somehow they can make it that. If you want to talk about trade for relievers, Yohan Duran is a guy I would actually be interested in trading.
I would
trade
an arm and a leg
stuff.
for
You
him.
want to
You want to talk about stuff? Got those 103.
Arm.
I'd trade an arm and a leg for him. Definitely. I would.
Like he's
Christian Scott reminds me of Willick. Go off, King. Go off. All right. I want to trade for Alexis Diaz. Would you trade Kevin Parada for Alexis Diaz?
And Acuna, you got to throw them both in. It's going to be a 2-package deal.
Acuna. And yeah. So should we move off of pitching? Should we get to the...
Sure.
All right. So we have spent about almost an hour on pitch. Jesus Christ.
Well, it's needed.
Hopefully the Mets spend that much time on that as well. Let's go to third base, because there's obviously going to be some debates here, I guess. I don't know how to put it here. You have Beatty, you have Vientos, you have Mauricio. All of these prospects, you hope that one of them is going to stick. Hopefully. You do have some free agents, obviously. It does not look like Matt Chapman is somebody that the Mets are going to go after, mainly because, he's just going to want a long-term deal, and, that's just that. I don't know how they address this position, to be honest. I've gone back and forth of it, but I do have a favorite of what I would actually do. Frank, we've talked about this before on our thing, but what would you do here?
Yeah, we've talked about this many times. For me, I have been very disappointed in Brett Beatty. I've been, Andrew Rhino hyped him up so much. I haven't seen it. I just feel like we've talked about what this lineup needs. It seems like even Brett Beatty at his best doesn't provide what they need. They need power. Beatty, he's just looking to hit singles and doubles and things like that. So he doesn't really fit the bill. We've talked about Vientos, not a third baseman. Even McNeil, last time he played third base, it wasn't pretty. I think the guy who deserves a shot at third base is Ronnie Mauricio. I've said that on our podcast plenty of times. I think his body profile is better as a third baseman than a second baseman or an outfielder. He's not going to play shortstop with Francisco Lindor there. He's got the higher upside with the power. He's a switch hitter. I love switch hitters. So I'd be looking at him. The free agent options, none of them really blow me away, especially if the Mets are not in the mix for Matt Chapman. I think Justin Turner, too old. And I don't love bringing back former Mets, especially that one, a guy who, so infamous. Bad as a Met, leaves the Mets, automatically becomes amazing. And he just became a trendsetter for so many other guys that ended up doing the exact same thing. They became the next Justin Turner, a guy who wasn't good, left the Mets, became great. I just feel like at his age, it would be so typical for him to either get hurt or just have a huge regression. So I'm against him. I think Candelario, I'm not going to go crazy off, one-year wonder, Donaldson, Longoria, Escobar. All these guys are just too old. I think we've talked so much about upside. I like the chances of Ronnie Mauricio over a lot of those other older guys. But I do like the trade options too. I think if any of them could be decent packages, we talked about the hypothetical. If things are as bad as San Diego says and Machado became mostly a salary dump, how could you say no to that? Ryan McMahon signed the big contract with Colorado, but I love his swing and what he brings to the table. He also has a little bit of versatility. So I do like Ryan McMahon. Obviously, Alex Bregman's does so many good things for the Astros year after year. And then Eugenio Suarez is a nice fit because of his power. Like we said, this team does need power. So my guy, I'd be focused on Mauricio. And then, if any of these guys can get a nice trade package of those trade options, I would consider that next. I am really against most of these free agent targets at third base.
Okay. John, I'll turn it over to you. Third base, how would you address this?
I echo a lot of what Frank said, so I'll try not to repeat some of the stuff, but I do kind of diverge in some spots. I will say, of the young Mets players, there is one singular untouchable player Francisco Alvarez, of the young prospect, those people. The next closest thing of the players I've seen for me is Ronnie Mauricio. I think Ronnie Mauricio has the most upside of all the players that we've seen. He's athletic. He's fast. He's only going to get bigger. He's only going to get stronger. He has pop. Ronnie Mauricio does a lot of things right. I think Ronnie Mauricio should get a chance to play third. I have no problem if the Mets go into the offseason and into spring training saying, hey, we're going to let Beatty and Vientos and Mauricio, we're going to let them fight it out, and the one that's hitting the best is going to play third. I don't have a problem with that. I think they're all young enough players, apart from the fact that I don't think Vientos has a real position. But other than that, if you want to let the best person be there, sure. I think the best person, if that happens, is going to be Ronnie Mauricio. So there's a lot of what Frank said that I agree with. The other thing, these free agents don't enthuse me, but I am a little higher on Turner on a short-term deal to not be the everyday third baseman, but to be third base insurance, to be a bat off the bench, to be a DH on a 2-year deal. I wouldn't hate it. I truly wouldn't. I do see what you're saying though about how he left and he was the ultimate, this person leaves the Mets and is better, and now he's going to come back and it's just the vibes are going to be off. I get that, but I think you could do worse than having Mauricio be your everyday third baseman and having, Turner be a guy who's on your 26-man roster, just because it's a big empty spot for the Mets, but I don't want to trade for any of these guys. I don't want to give up capital to acquire any of these players that you might be able to get, with the exception of, I mean, maybe if you could get Machado because the Padres are we're going to pay all of his salary, or you take all of his salary and you don't have to give us, really anything, then I would do that. But other than that, I think you can get a good mix out of Mauricio and Turner.
Yeah, I think Turner is one of the options. I mean, I can kind of back up Frank with Turner. I think the only thing that really factors in is okay, there's the whole Mets curse, yada 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 yada, the whole narrative. They leave the Mets and they're great. I think that just the main turnoff is probably just the fact that he's 38 years old. He that's
turns
literally
39 this week. He turns 39. Justin Turner.
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday.
Everyone sing.
I mean, we've talked about any multi-year deal with a guy in his 40s. The massive regression, coming off the cliff, so to speak, it's bound to happen at any moment. I mean, that's the way I see it with Justin Turner. And he's going to be leaving Fenway Park, where he just had an awesome year. I mean, right-handed wheelhouse. I mean, Fenway Park, it's perfect for Justin Turner. You come to Citi Field, it's not the same thing. He had a good year with Boston, not a out of this world year. So I mean, for me, I just think we've talked about, I think there's bigger priorities. If we're talking about free agency, where the Mets should spend their money, like we talked about, I'm willing to look more in the pitching. When we get to corner outfield, I'd be more concerned about that, because I think right now, like we talked about, I feel like in-house, the Mets have a better chance of Mauricio filling this than, Justin Turner, compared to all the other in-house options with all these other positions of need.
Ibby, have you talked about any third base?
No, I mean, no, it's just
all over the place here.
The only thing I would throw into this is while yes, I too am a Justin Turner fan, I understand exactly what Frank is talking about in terms of age. I would not look at him in terms of third base, more so DH, if anything. Also because Stearns has been, attracted to and trying to acquire Justin Turner, when he was in Milwaukee multiple times, they couldn't get the money to work and things of that nature. Does that, shine come off of that apple because he's 39 years old now? He's like, okay, I had my shot. Now I don't want it so much because he's 39. I agree with you in terms of the offense at Fenway. He did have a strong year. And I think a lot of times, and this could be myself as well, where it's like I see that production, and I think he had 98 games started as a DH last year. I see that production. It's just like, maybe it's because I'm so used to having zero production from my DH, and then I see those numbers. I'm like, that would be nice. But I agree with you in terms of the right-hander at Fenway using the wall and things like that, that it wouldn't translate as well. I buy that more so than I'm not one to really subscribes to the curse types of things. But I get it wholeheartedly. But I'm with you in terms of saying, and I said this on our last show as well. I fully believe that this team should focus in-house and see what they have at third base, because there's so many other needs. Like we just said, there's 28 people on the floor. Like you have a lot of things to fill out. And what you have a glut of is middle infielder, corner infielder types, where it's like, figure out what you have. I say give Ronnie the ball, or give him the glove in this case, let him play the spot and see what happens. And then figure out in other areas, like Frank just mentioned, that being the corner outfield and throwing more money into your starting pitching and throwing more money into your bullpen. We can figure out third base, focus in other areas.
I mean, the main thing that I would have done, I would do to address the third base position, and this is obviously a little bit more of a savvy way of kind of getting that great Jeff McNeil off of the roster. But I mean, I'm sorry. Did I offend you?
You talk about it every week. I mean, how many more times do you want to bring up? You've been trying to get rid of
and he's still here. Nothing changes, so I'm still going to continue to talk about it. Andrew actually put on this as a point. We did some trade proposals, I think, last week on our podcast, and Eugenio Suarez is somebody that I would definitely buy low on. And if you are okay with plugging Ronnie Mauricio into third base, you could. Second base, like, I think that there's a possibility. I think he did play a good second base, but I think that the Mets are going to try and utilize his tools a little bit more and try to be a third baseman. But a dream scenario, someone who needs power on their team and needs power protection for Pete Alonso, I would bring in Eugenio Suarez. And then what was in your trade package? I mean, that was like a 3-team mega trade, but that was a crazy one. But like on our end, I mean, what would go? Like, I mean, it would be McNeil and like.
I mean, it would just depend, because if they're moving that 17.5, because now Ohtani's already told me I'm not going to come to Seattle, so that kind of was a part of that. But yeah, I mean, you would probably, if you want to McNeil because they want more contact, and then do they maybe take Beatty just because they need a cost controllable third baseman, the 2-for-1, and then maybe you try to get Brian Wu or Emerson Hancock or you're not getting Bryce Miller, but either Wu, Hancock.
Could you include an arm in that? That's what I mean. Like,
I mean, David Peterson had 2 hips. I think Seattle's the underrated pitching factory. They probably turned David Peterson and Tyler McGill into actual aces because that's what Seattle does. So I could see them wanting either. Well, I think McGill more. But, like, again, Seattle's a team that they want that contact hitting. Hey, Jeff McNeil is supposed to be a great contact hitter. Go have him. We'll take the power, and then you can give us, Wu, Hancock. I would have taken Isaiah Campbell, but they just traded him. So, again, there's plenty of Seattle's arm barn is pretty good. And they're, again, a trade partner that I would love to call Jerry Dipoto up right now. Let's get a little talk.
He's always willing to make a deal.
He's always willing to make a deal. Always.
Yeah, we've been pushing McNeil to Seattle for a long, long time. There's a lot of assets that they have that we want, and there's a lot of assets that we have that they could possibly want. So that's something that I would do. But again, Jeff McNeil, batting champion, he ain't going anywhere. Franchise player, and I mean, end of story. Completely untouchable. Am I right?
Sure.
Sure.
Alex Bregman. Have we talked about Alex Bregman before? I don't know. There's possibility they move on from him.
He's good at baseball.
How available is
he's not
Alex
bad.
Bregman?
I don't know. There was some stuff about how they wanted to.
Well, it all comes down if they're going to want to pay him. That's the whole thing. Because he's due after. Is he a free agent next year? Is that what he is?
Yeah, it should be.
So after next. Yeah.
And he'll be what?
Is
he going to be 30?
30?
Is he pushing 30, 29, going
30,
30?
30? Yeah, something like that. 29, 30.
So, I mean, the Stros are usually calculated when it comes to paying people. Will they pay him the contract that he could probably fetch on the open market? I don't know.
Yeah. That's the thing about me. It's just like I don't like plugging in prospects into like the lineup at all. And like, yes, Ronnie Mauricio, I do like him a lot, but giving the starting job to the prospects, none of them have taken the job and ran with it yet. So just like, 2 years ago when they brought in Eduardo Escobar, I would have preferred to trade for somebody like Matt Chapman. Different like ranked farm systems with the Blue Jays and the Mets. It would have been perfect. He had a 2-year deal. Like it was a short-term bridge, but it was a guy who had young upside, whatever. Matt Chapman, obviously a free agent now. He's going to get a long-term deal, water under the bridge at this point. But Like Beatty, I mean, like he's done nothing at this point. I personally see nothing. Mark Vientos, I just don't think he is a third baseman. I would like to see him get some reps into this lineup, obviously, but I just don't think he's a third baseman. Like overall, to put it simple, Beatty and Vientos, their gloves are terrible. Like they're both just complete stone hands at third base. Ronnie Mauricio, I think that he can definitely incorporate those tools as he continues to develop his game, because he's 23 years old and he can actually like move, I would say. Like he can actually move as compared to Beatty and Vientos, who are kind of like one tool and this is what they're going to get. Even though Beatty has kind of just been like a zero tool player so far. Anything else that we want to add here?
Beatty's been real bad. I want to agree with you and just say that out loud for everybody. He's real bad.
Would you give up? Are you giving up on him right now? Thrown in the towel?
Yeah. I mean, like it's obviously it is early, but he did have a full season, never really showed anything better. And I think now at this point, and you can say what you want, other people are higher on some of these guys, the Jet Williams, the Acuñas and stuff. I just think like it's going to be real quick that people are going to move on mentally from Beatty to one of these other guys. And I think it was Ibby that said, like, they have a glut of these middle infielder, corner infielder types. And, Ronnie Mauricio kind of rose above him. And I think Vientos has much more potential as a hitter. And then whether you love Acuña or you think he's okay, there's Acuña, there's Jet Williams. Like, I just think I don't think Beatty's not good enough to not get passed. Does that make sense? Like, I don't think he's good enough to just not be looked over in the immediate term.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm a huge draft stock guy. Like when somebody's taken in the first round, I have expectation for that player to be one of those, cornerstone pieces to the team. And, we've seen a decent amount of sample of Brett Beatty. He was a first round pick, Brody pick, Grantley, but he came with expectation. He hasn't met it yet. And obviously it's a little bit early to do that, but I just don't see anything promising with him. I really don't. Like any of his hit tools, any of his profile, like I just don't see it. We already know he's been he's been stone hands at third base. It's been just very painful to watch. And he is supposed to be one of those like older players. He was, he skipped for fifth grade, fourth grade, whatever it was. He came out of high school or whatever. He was supposed to be one of those like older and more like seasoned players when he came up. And he's looked like the worst prospect out of all four. And I mean, I don't know. I just don't see it. I really don't see it with Brett Beatty, but
the biggest thing,
I'm sure other people do. Yeah.
I mean, the biggest thing with Beatty has always been, and it started when he was like in Brooklyn and moving through the system. He pounded the ball into the ground, and he hits the ball hard, as someone just mentioned in the chat. Yeah, he hits the ball hard, but if you're just going to keep pounding the ball into the ground, it doesn't help anybody. And I mean, I know Carson, you're always big on pulling the ball, but just like lifting the ball in general, like if you could just do that and just adjust your swing a little bit. Like, look, it's easier for me to say that as I'm sitting here, but I would have thought at some point throughout his journey through the system, it would have been something that might have been tweaked a little bit, as opposed to just saying, well, he's hitting the ball hard, it'll get figured out. It's like, maybe we got to fix a couple of things so we can put the ball in the air a little bit more and pull the ball more, so we can, add a little bit more to that hit tool. Because I believe, Carson, you have said before, his hit power is relatively high, correct?
Raw power is pretty high.
Raw power, raw power is high.
Like overall, I mean, it's just like the bat path is just so it's just so like all over the place. It's gotten so bad that where he's taking, even if you want to talk about going with the pitch, this guy is taking inside fastballs and smacking them the other way on the ground. Like that's how bad he was this year. And like, yeah, I get it. He's young. He still has the upside. I'm sure he does. He had the first round pedigree somehow. But the problem with him is that this year, in his first full year, the guy was the worst third baseman in all of baseball. Like that's how bad Brett Beatty was. And seeing that from, a first, like I don't see any other third baseman last year, like established third baseman, that was worse than Brett Beatty. And it was concerning because it was just really, really bad. And a hush falls over the room.
Well, no, if there's one thing I'm going to pull this comment
Yeah.
up real quick from Carlos, because I wanted to address something he said earlier, mentioning some of the players that are within this system and plugging them into the point you were just making before, Carson, and asking the question as to why. I think it was this one right here. Basically asking, why are we going to be doing these things instead of just developing the prospects and asking that question? And I say, it's like, I get what you're saying. On paper, it sounds great, but let's be honest with ourselves. And I've said this on our show multiple times. When it comes to developing prospects over the last handful of years, this team has had a hard time doing that. So it's hard for me to just assume, as much as I like the profile of some of these players that are within our system, it's hard for me to assume that they are going to translate that at the big league level, because we've been sold the bill of goods before on certain players, and it doesn't work. Yes, it worked with Francisco Alvarez. Fantastic. He was the number one prospect in baseball, shows out, hits 20-something home runs. Great. But I don't know if this team is on the right path just yet in terms of developing. We have to see that actually play out. Can't just assume.
Also, odds are all those guys aren't going to make it. That's just how baseball is, development or not. Like, some of those guys are doing amazing things. They're going to get here and they're not going to be good.
Yeah,
That's
and I think the other thing is that, one of the other points about is why trade for Eugenio Suarez. It's because Carson has already made his concerns clear in previous episodes about Jet Williams, about Luis Acuna. As far as those small frames, how are they going to develop power? Whereas Eugenio Suarez has a proven track record of power. We've talked so much about that, prospects as lottery tickets compared to proven commodities. Eugenio Suarez is not a guy who's going to set your farm system back 3 years and you have to give up a bunch of top pieces. We're talking about him as a guy who he shouldn't cost you too much, yet he's a perfect
tough year
fit for your lineup. And the thing is, you shouldn't have to even part with any of those guys, I don't think. Maybe one of them, maybe like Jet, but other than that, you're not losing Gilbert, you're not losing Acuna, you're not losing Mauricio in order to acquire a guy like Suarez. We're not talking about.
I understand I understand
we're not making a trade for
about
Bryce Harper here, so we have to give up everything. Like, it's not that kind of deal.
I mean, I understand that. I understand the concern about like a player like Suarez. Like, he strikes out a little. There you go, right there. See, he strikes out a little too much.
He strikes out a lot. Yeah,
a lot of people, the old-fashioned fans, are not going to like this. But strikeouts are extremely subjective these days. Okay, we measure these in chases and whiffs. So he does not chase that much. He whiffs a lot. The pitch selection, the pitch recognition is good on Eugenio Suarez. Was it a little bit down perhaps this year? Yes, but he does project fairly well in Citi Field. I think that Citi Field is a fantastic park for him, but that's just a different story. But again, I think that if the Mets actually were, going for an external option for third base, if they want to keep the internal Beatty, Vientos, Mauricio room, if they wanted to do that, I still want to see them address somebody in third base. And we talked about this on our podcast a few weeks ago. They need to bring in, whether it's a veteran or a veteran with some upside or something that they need to prove to push these prospects, because nobody has taken the job and ran away with it. I talked about Gio Urshela. He's coming off of surgery. He has something to prove. You give him a 1-year deal. If he shows some of the upside that he has shown, the 15 to 20 home run power, if he's healthy, sure. That guy could be in your lineup batting 8th on a regular basis. But, Beatty, I haven't seen anything yet. Vientos, I see more as a DH or a first baseman. And then Ronnie Mauricio, you can shift him over to second base if you do that. But again, Gio Urshela is not somebody that I'm going to say, okay, this is my franchise third baseman. It's somebody that can push these prospects in the third base position and actually, get them to run away with it. Because even though he was just non-tendered, we've already said this, Luis Guillorme is not going to do that. He's not going to come for anybody's job. That guy was a bench bat, a bench player, a bench glove, to be honest, by the end there. And that was literally it. That was all you were looking at.
And one hell of a relief pitcher.
One hell of a relief pitcher. He was doing everything. It's a novelty again. Like, again, I feel like with Luis Guillorme, I mean, at one point he was fun, like he was a fun player, but it's run its course. Like it's time to move on. It's time to look like a serious organization. Enough with these one-tool players. Try to get some versatility in here, and that doesn't involve Luis Guillorme. And I probably Frank actually posted these, and 49 with the juice balls. So
Juice ball, yeah.
Then it was
Still.
31, 22.
31, 40. Yeah, exactly. So that's what I mean. And I think he was banged up a little bit as well this year.
He still played 162. I mean, that's something that you don't necessarily want to take for granted. Like, I mean, imagine having a guy that could do that. I mean, the Mets. We always see so many injuries. We've talked about our concerns with some of the guys on the roster. Have a guy play 162. That'd be real nice, and not total stone hands at third.
Who was banged up? Am I thinking of Moncada? Moncada banged up.
Moncada was banged up. Yeah.
Moncada's
it's also nice to have.
That's
it's nice to have continuity, man. When you have, you Pete play. I know this year he got hit on the hand and he missed some time, but Pete plays 160 games most seasons. Lindor plays 160 games. Now all of a sudden you've got another guy out there playing 160 games and producing and having continuity, and you see less of the bottom of your bench. You see less of Guillorme and blah blah blah. Like that stuff matters. Absolutely matters.
Did you take? Ooh, this is actually a really good question.
Yes.
This is yes. This is a 100% yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All the time, yes.
Yes.
How old is Robert? Is he 28 now? 28?
I feel like he might even be younger.
I think 20. I think he's 25.
Younger?
Yeah, he's young.
I think he's 25. 25 going on 26, I want to say.
Wow. How the hell did the White Sox fuck this up? That's crazy.
Yeah, he's 26. Yep. So
26.
Yep, 26. Yeah, I would 100% do that. That's another one. Moncada, I mean, he's fallen off a little bit. He has a little bit to prove. He could be another one that pushes, Beatty or Mauricio or something like that. Because again, I just don't like plugging in prospects. Like, I'm not going to say, okay, I want to get rid of Jeff McNeil, of course, because Jeff McNeil pisses me off. But I'm not going to say, oh yeah, because we have Jet Williams, we're great. Like, I'm not gonna plug these guys in and they've proven absolutely nothing. Like, another thing that we'll talk about in a little bit with the outfield and, Drew Gilbert, somebody that could possibly replace Marte, who is, been banged up and we don't know what we're going to get from him. He hasn't proven anything in the majors yet. So, I don't like plugging in prospects and banking on prospects when you just don't know what you're going to get out of it. I mean, we talk about this every time in the draft. They're lottery tickets. They always will be lottery tickets from the beginning until they prove otherwise.
I know this guy is I know it's a dirty word to bring him up, especially after he was non-tendered, but early in the season, that's why I was like, look, man, I understand why they're trying to get some burn out of Vogelback. And it's not because Vogelback was some kind of great player. Obviously, he's like a career 212 hitter. Like, they overrated what his skill set was. But early in the season, after he came over here mid-season and was arguably the best hitter acquired at the deadline the year before, when you're a team that still has expectations of veteran leadership and veteran success, I understood it. Was he the absolute best option? No, but he was the best option of a bunch of bad options. People were like, oh, let's get Vientos in there. Like, yeah, I'd like to see Vientos in there, but every time they called him up, he hit 140. So, there was, and again, Vogelback is, I don't want to turn this into a show about him, but sometimes you need a guy who's got a track record of doing something, anything over the guy who's done nothing at this level. And I think sometimes that needs to be taken into account.
Yeah. I mean, there wasn't really many at that trade deadline. Again, this is like beating a dead horse at this point, but at that trade deadline, a lot of the guys that were traded, they didn't perform the best.
Did nothing.
But to be honest, I still would have taken the chance with Trey Mancini because I was just so ready for the Mets to get somebody to protect Pete Alonso and like a 37-year-old Darren Ruff with arthritis and, a guy, Daniel Vogelbach, who doesn't even own a glove and doesn't move at all. I mean, I did not like the create a DH, but again, that's just like a water under the bridge thing. And that's Billy Epler era. And we're talking about Stearns era now. And somebody was actually talking about Jorge Soler in the chat.
We all
so
love
I just
him.
want to go straight to DH. Obviously, the regular DH is gone. He was non-tendered, as Frank called him, infamously a waste of fat. He is gone. At this point, I mean, right now, internally, I'd say that Mark Vientos is probably the top of the list, but the Mets are definitely going to pivot and try, I hope, to get a DH that could possibly, protect Pete Alonso, because I will say it again, I asked this question way too many times. Since Pete Alonso was called up in 2019, one free agent that was a perennial 30 home run bat that you can write in for 30 home runs. No one. They have brought in absolutely no one through free agency. And the fact that some of the guys that they brought in through trade, sure, a 36-year-old Robinson Cano, if you're going to bank on that, go ahead. But what I'm saying is they did not bring in a 30 home run bat. And before I hear that Daniel Vogelbach hit 30 home runs in 2019, allow me to saw my foot off while you explain that to me. So at this point, Jorge Soler, that's the top guy that I would go with, because that was just mentioned in the chat. I just want to put it out there. Jorge Soler is the number one guy that I am going after for DH. I know it says outfield typo. Oh, whatever. Andrew, I'll go to you. Obviously, we've talked about this so many goddamn times on our show, but main guy that you would go after, I don't know, say the praises of Daniel Vogelbach. I don't know, whatever you want to do.
That will not happen. I mean, if we're talking strictly free agency, again, yeah, Soler is the best bat out there. Maybe you could say Teo just because he gives you a little offensive, defensive versatility in the outfield. But having Soler who can hit 40 homers easily in a season behind Alonso would be the easiest. It just cost you cash and take him away from the division rival. Again, I'm going to keep saying his name. I said him last week. I'm calling St. Louis. I'm trying to get Nolan Gorman. And even he could be the third base option as well, as if he could just be your DH. Because, again, he was never going to play third or any of the corners in St. Louis. I think they got a couple of guys in the corner in St. Louis that I don't think he's going to be playing third base or first base anytime soon. So, for me, Gorman is, if we're talking trade chips, he's my number one target for the DH because it gives you the value, again, insurance for both second base and third base. And then you could put in a lineup that can give you those 30 homers. But Soler on the free agent market, again, to add that guy, and if need be, you need to stick him in the outfield. He can play, you can stick him in left field. I mean, he'd be better than Lucas Duda or Daniel Murphy out there, so at least you got that. So if we're just talking strictly just DH bats, add Soler, or, there's a couple other guys. Eloy is out there as well, which you see the White Sox are listening off. We've said that name for about 3 years.
Yeah, some of the guys that you're listing off here, they're on outfield, so it's just.
It's all the same.
I probably should have put outfield and designated hitter together because most of the designated hitters are outfielders, but
just bats in general. But yeah. So again, there's plenty of guys that go out, but if you're it just depends what area they want. If they're going the free agent market, you go Teo, you go Soler. If you're going to look in that trade market, Eloy, Gorman, obviously we're talking just DH, but eventually Soto could be. We could talk about that later in the outfield spot, but he's not the greatest defensively. I'm not saying to put him in the DH position, but for me, if we're talking strictly free agents, you got to go out and get Soler or Teo.
It's a Dom Smith method. Put him in left field.
Put him in left
field.
Stick him out there.
He'll be fine. He can hit.
He'll be fine out there.
Put him in left field. John, I'll go to you for designated hitter, the big bat.
Yeah, it's hard not to like Soler. He makes a lot of sense. I think somebody said in the comments, or a few people, his contract's not going to be crazy. This is not a guy who's going to break the bank. And again, I never care about money because it's not my money. And I'm not one of those people who thinks that the higher a payroll is, the higher your ticket prices are going to be. That's not how it works. Steve Cohen has tons of money, so I don't care what contracts are. I really don't. But, it does matter in terms of flexibility at times. And, you don't want to be locked into guys. I don't think it's going to be a ton for him. I do like Soler. The other look, I don't think the Mets are going to get Ohtani. And I'm not even sure Ohtani is a good investment, despite how good he is. He is great. But I think when you have Steve Cohen, I think it's probably malpractice if you don't call. And so,
Yeah.
the only negative to Soler is through no fault of his own. Like, you don't go sign Soler before you call Ohtani's cap. I don't even know if that needs to be said, but that's just where I would start. Like, hey, just want to see what your interest level is. Just want to see what's going on. Just want to see, like, you have to at least have a cursory conversation with that guy. And the other part, I think Andrew hit it. It's a little bit of a different conversation, but Juan Soto is out there, and I think Juan Soto is a better get for the Mets than even Ohtani. And people are going to tell me that's crazy because it's just money versus trading, and you got to give up so much. Juan Soto might be Ted Williams, so I would trade pretty much anything that's not nailed down for Juan Soto. So I don't care. I don't care if it's Jet Williams, Drew Gilbert. You pick your people. You can have any of them, all of them. I would trade whomever. The only person I wouldn't put in that deal because it's 1 year left, again, is the only untouchable player, which is Alvarez. And then anybody on the major league roster that's established, they don't want anyway because they don't want to pay anybody money. So I think you have to look at all that stuff together. But independently in a vacuum, Soler makes all the sense in the world. And if you want to be crazy, go get Soler and then go get Juan Soto and have a real offense. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, I still don't think they're just one bat away just to protect Alonso. I think that there's like multiple bats they got to bring in here. But
and I would do that.
We'll
you can hit Soler sixth. You know what I mean? Like, you go Alonso,
exactly.
Soto,
Like
Soler, or whatever, permutation of that you want to do. But like, that makes so much sense.
Yeah. Soler also helped the Braves win the World Series. Does it seem like the best postseason hitters are power hitters?
Yes.
Because
That's
instant so weird.
Games.
That's so goddamn weird.
Instant offense
it's got to be a coincidence. That's got to be a coincidence somehow. Reggie Jackson. I don't know what he did for his entire career. But yeah, what was I? Frank?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Soler for quite a while now. It's been more than a year. Even before he signed with the Marlins, or some of those on Carson's radar for sure. And again, I mean, we're all in favor. He's spent playing time National League East now between the Braves and Miami. He's done really well. And like we said, it'd be nice to actually take away from division rounds for once instead of the other way around. So I'm all for Jorge Soler, and one of the reasons is because he could actually every now and then play the outfield, compared to the guy who should not be named, who only played DH, did not own a glove. He did not bring it with him into the stadium. So that's one of the other things I like about Soler, is because like we know that the Mets have this big time hole of 2 corner outfield spots, depending on the status of Starling Marte, that having Soler, who occasionally could play some corner, can do some DH for you as well. It's a really nice fit. We'll get to the other guy who I've been talking about all offseason later on. But to me, he's the main guy. Like we said, we talked about Ohtani. Obviously, Juan Soto, who's going to say no to that. I liked JD Martinez last year. Now I got to take the same stance that I did with Turner. Just a tad too old right now. Same goes for Andrew McCutchen. Jesse Winker on a 1 year, I'm not totally against him because he does have power, and we know that this team could use that. And then real quick, Brandon Drury, he was a guy that he was an all-star, but he did Cincinnati, had a couple good moments with the Mets. I look at him more as utility, if anything, instead of DH. I think he fits that role a lot better just because of the positions that he plays. I wouldn't want my most versatile guy to only not be in the field. I mean, that just doesn't make sense to me. He's going to be DH, the guy who plays the most positions on the team. Obviously, Wilmer Flores, I'd always love a reunion with him. I'm always going to be biased to that. But that other name on there, I just have to throw this out there. Christopher Morel, the guy who is the quote-unquote centerpiece for Pete Alonso. Absolutely laughable. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's got power. We like power. But Pete Alonso, centerpiece, come on now. I mean, let's not be ridiculous. So I don't view him the way I don't view him as, equal to Pete Alonso. So let me just get that out there. But again, out of this list, Soler is the top guy.
Yeah. It just seemed like there were so many moving parts with that report of Christopher Morel of how, the Cubs believe this is the whole, like, here's the thing. If there is so much of a hassle and so much of a debate to trade Pete Alonso, why don't you just fucking pay him?
Just pay Alonso. Just pay him.
Yeah.
Just pay him.
Just pay the guy.
There are going to be people in the comments that are going to say that he's not a winning player and he's one-dimensional and he's this and he's that. I don't know where you get that from. I don't know where the Pete hate comes from. I see a guy who has hit more home runs than any player in the sport since he started playing baseball in the major leagues. I see a guy who has done I have seen a guy who has done unbelievable historic things in terms of home run pace, and that includes a 60-game shortened season. I see a guy who wakes up and hits 40. You can write it down. Wakes up, 160 games, 40 home runs, 115 RBI. You're going to replace that? Go ahead. Go ahead. I dare you. Go replace that. Christopher Morel is talented. I understand that. You hope that he could be half the player of Pete Alonso. Any person you're going to mention, you just hope they're going to be Pete Alonso. And guess what? They're not going to be. Pete Alonso's really good at baseball.
Yeah, that's the thing about the one-dimensional talk of Pete Alonso, of like he only provides power. First of all, good.
This team doesn't have any
Second of
power.
all, the thing
I'll
is,
take that
second of all,
dimension.
and even if I continue and elevate the point of his batting average being too low, even though that stat is pretty much completely useless at this point, his if his batting average is too low, then like here's the thing. This guy faces the third lowest amount of pitches in the goddamn strike zone. He doesn't have many opportunities. I wonder why. Because you've protected him with Daniel Vogelbach. You have protected him with Darren Ruff. You have protected him with Dominic Smith. You have protected him with J.D. Davis. You have protected him with nothing. You have protected him with nobody with a profile similar to him that can produce power. You have even put Jeff McNeil batting fifth behind him.
Carson,
I mean, what else do you expect?
Carson, you mentioned Dom Smith. There was a time when Dom Smith was, quote unquote, protecting Pete Alonso when he was in the midst of not hitting a home run for over a calendar fucking year. You want to talk about not getting a 30 home run guy? How about a 15 home run guy?
Oh, remember when I said something about first round picks earlier?
How about a 1 home run guy?
Like,
how about a guy who's
remember when I said something about first round picks earlier?
Yeah.
There's another one.
Yeah.
I mean, just what have they given him? Like,
Exactly.
Like, what have they given him to protect him? The fact that he's been able to pencil in 40 home runs every year is really impressive.
And
I mean, it really is.
When Javi was here, they hit him behind him or in front of him? I don't remember. Was Javi behind or Alonso or in front of him?
Javi hit behind him. And
yay, 2 months of Javier Baez.
That's it. That was it. That's the best protection.
But in a year that we used 64 players.
Look, I know batting average doesn't matter a lot, but A.K. Ron just brought it up. Alonso is a 251 career hitter.
That's great in today's baseball.
That is great in today's baseball. People are talking about him like he hits 190. By the way, you know who hits 190 and hits 40 home runs? Kyle Schwarber. And you're going to tell me that Kyle Schwarber is a useless player? Now, I think Alonso's a better player than Schwarber because he plays in the field, he plays better in the field, and he is less streaky. But I cannot fathom somebody saying that 251 and 40 and 120 is a bad line. And Carlos is going to say, oh, no, he's one-dimensional. This show just went down the tubes. He just said batting average doesn't matter on a baseball show. Okay, Carlos, I forgot. It's 1971.
Yeah, you'd rather have a 300 average with 10 home runs or a 250 with 40 home runs. I mean,
talk about missing my point by a country mile.
Yeah.
I'm saying
and
people
that's
are
coming from Frank. Y'all don't realize, okay? Y'all don't realize how much he has grown, and I'm proud of him. All right.
Again, you look at all the numbers. I mean, you want to talk about numbers? I'll give you numbers, okay? And we're not talking about batting average. We're talking about this past season, Pete Alonso. How many of his home runs gave the Mets the lead were the winning home runs? And here's the most important stat: wins. When do the Mets win when Pete Alonso is not in the lineup? They don't. That's why Pete Alonso had to rush back injured to get back in his lineup, because that's the only way this lineup has a pulse. Now, imagine his numbers if you actually gave him some protection and gave him a good power here behind him. You see that batting average climb up, the home runs would be even better. So the most important side to me, and I love batting average as much as any old man, but wins, that's what matter. Pete Alonso helps the Mets win baseball games. You don't just find that with any other player. And like we said, be able to do it in New York doesn't happen often, especially on this side of New York.
Listen, I'm not going to slander. I'm not going to go into a full argument of why batting average is completely useless. I'm not going to do that because nobody has time for that.
Look it up, Keith. Look it up. It's been like over 20 games. Look it up.
Like, here's the thing. When you look at the splits between how Pete Alonso hits during losses and how Pete Alonso hits during wins, it's concerning. It really is concerning. He's like a league average hitter in losses. And then just like, it's just a complete other level. I mean, the amount of impact that this guy has on the lineup, like, how could you just possibly say off the top of your head so quick, yeah, let's trade him. Let's move on. Well, I mean, yeah, that's the reason why you haven't won. It's not the fact that you have not protected him throughout his entire career while he's still hitting 40 home runs. I mean,
I don't get it.
There were 3 games where DJ Stewart, when he was red hot, hitting home runs left and right, Pete Alonso was fantastic with DJ Stewart behind him. There's 3 straight games. Pete Alonso, if you want to talk about batting average, Pete Alonso in those 3 games with an actual power hitter behind him, 8 for 14. I mean, like, it's ridiculous. Like, who knew you need another power hitter in your lineup in 2023? Who knew?
No, Carson, you're wrong. Carlos says all we want to do is watch home runs and other people want to win. That's the difference. Despite all of the facts that were just brought up about how Keith performs and wins.
Carlos, did you watch the Texas Rangers? Like, did you watch how their team was built? Like,
no,
did you not see home runs by Adolis Garcia and Corey Seager? I mean, really?
Nope. Pete's terrible. Carlos hates Pete. He thinks the Mets will be better when they get rid of Pete.
And listen, I've talked about, people have talked about, maybe Pete's turning into Kyle Schwarber a little bit, striking out a little too much. Not true. Striking out a little too much. Low batting average. Kyle Schwarber is one of the greatest postseason hitters of all time. Mm-hmm. Again, let me ask, doesn't it seem weird that all of the great postseason hitters are power hitters? Carson, weird concept.
Do you know how you win most of the time in the postseason in Major League Baseball? With power pitching and power hitting. Yeah. That's how most teams win. Guys who throw hard.
You're gonna hate David Stearns if that's gonna be the mentality. I'm gonna tell you right now, because he's power and pitching pure. So that's all I can really say. But I mean, I have first base here. There's tons of information here, but I think we all know, I think we all know who we want the first baseman to be for a long time.
Yes.
I just don't see. I'm sorry. I just don't see. If there's a Matt Olson you can point me to, if there's a Freddie Freeman you can point me to, sure. But where the hell is he? Where is he? He's nowhere.
I'm a big Luke Ritter guy.
Oh, don't get him started, man. Oh, fuck.
Fucking minor league homer leader, baby.
Oh,
fuck yeah.
I was kidding.
Oh, he said the magic words.
He said the magic names.
I just picked somebody off the list.
Yeah. I knew putting Luke Ritter on one of these graphics was going to cause a problem. I just knew it. But yeah. Other things that I have on here.
Adam Dunn played in Great American Small Park, and Pete Alonso still outproduces him. Imagine putting Pete Alonso in Great American Small Park.
And also 40 straight, like, what was it, 4 straight years of 40 home runs? Yeah. Adam Dunn?
Yeah.
Hot.
Yeah, but he was just, according again to the comment, Adam Dunn was Adam Dunn even with Griffey in the lineup. I don't even know how you can type that. And
we can look at it like this. A home run equals 4 singles. So 1 for 4 with a home run equals 4 for 4 with 4 singles. Same production. It's an easy way. It's a simple way to look at it, of course.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that you trade him, and then like we've always say, where's the alternative? Like, show me who they get that gives them 40 home runs by themselves.
They haven't found anybody yet.
I love the profile of Ryan Clifford, but stop plugging people in like that. I mean,
also, I'm tired of the body type thing. He won't age well. I don't know. I watched Jim Thome hit almost 700 home runs. Was Jim Thome built like? Was he ever built like a Greek statue? I don't think so.
Let me add that on to what John just said.
Yeah.
Let me add this. Have we seen Pete Alonso slow down at all?
No.
You can't keep this guy off the field. You can't keep him off the field. I mean, that's a risk that you need to be willing to take. Again, if you're concerned about how Pete Alonso goes long term, then point me to a Matt Olson. Point me to a Freddie Freeman. Where the hell are they? They're nowhere. I mean, you want to do like these little fix-in solutions again of Adrian Gonzalez? I mean, what else? What do you want to do? I mean, I'm sorry. I really am sorry for that. But off the top of my head, I thought of a bad first baseman. That was it. Yeah,
James Loney, all those guys.
You don't even have to go back. You don't even have to go back to those guys. Look at the 2024 free agent list that you put together. Every one of those guys is either terrible, old, or both.
Yeah.
Upside, but you never know. Like that's the thing. Like they're old. I mean, there's a few guys on there that I would take a flyer on, but it's not somebody that I'm like, okay, yeah.
Look,
it's replacing Pete Alonso.
We were talking about bench players when we started and how the Mets need to upgrade in that way. Like, look, the last list, there was a Brandon Drury. Would I like Brandon Drury on the bench of this team? I would sign for that.
Sure,
is there somebody on this list? CJ Cron. Would I take CJ Cron on the bench as a backup first baseman, part-time DH? Maybe. But like none of these guys are playing first base every day, giving you anywhere near. I could venture to say that you could take 6 or 7 of these guys' names, and they wouldn't give you Pete Alonso's production in 2024
combined.
Yeah.
Combined.
And the one thing I'll throw in there just to put a bow on this is talking about the lack of development over the years for this team, and then the one guy that is actually developed turns into one of the best power hitters in the sport. And we want to run him out of town because we have so many things either around him or behind him to, match said production. Doesn't make sense.
I'm under the philosophy that elite hitters are power hitters now. I mean, that's just how it is these days. And if I were to look at the whole Mets franchise, Pete Alonso is the best hitter in Mets history, in my opinion. That's just me. Again, I didn't see Strawberry. I didn't see much of Piazza. Like, I didn't see that. But what I can say is, overall talent-wise, power, perennial. I mean, Pete Alonso is the best hitter in Mets history, in my opinion. That's just me. But I don't think we really need to say anything besides just pay freaking Pete Alonso, unless Andrew has anything else that he would like to rebuttal, because he always likes to stir the goddamn pot with the trade offers.
Nah, I think the James Loney and Adrian Gonzalez topic was good enough. I think we fit the quota for the day.
I know.
Okay, now
that's different. Jordan is better than LeBron. We're not going that crazy.
Going off the rails now.
Okay. Won't even. All right. Well, we did kind of dance over it. Let's go to the outfield because there's quite a few holes there. Okay. Brandon Nimmo locked down for the next 7 years. Already know about that. You have your center fielder. Finally, you have your center fielder. We've been searching for one for a long time. Starling Marte, the biggest question mark. You don't know what you're going to get out of him whatsoever. And of course, Jeff McNeil, you can shift him to the outfield. I don't want to do that. DJ Stewart is back, can play the outfield. I wouldn't recommend him starting at all, to be honest, on a team with this type of financial flexibility. But what are you looking at here? Frank, I'll go to you first in the outfield because there's different ways that you can look at this because there's 2 spots they need to fill, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, to me, again, I'm very high on Teoscar Hernandez. I think he's a guy that makes a ton of sense. Obviously, I don't want to beat the dead horse like we talked about with the power thing, but Teoscar Hernandez is a guy that gives you power every year. But he also gives you a little bit of athleticism. He could move around a little bit as far as he's got a little bit of speed. He can hit his doubles and actually play the outfield while giving you good power. So he's someone that I definitely look at. We've talked about Jock Peterson for years. I mean, he'd be a great fit on this team. And, like we talked about, a little bit of DH, a little bit of corner outfield, kind of do a lot of different things for you.
Just do it.
Yeah, definitely.
Just do it.
Lourdes
Every fucking year. I'm sorry. I interrupted you, but just do it.
Lourdes Gurriel Jr., he could play a lot of different positions. He was on the National League champion Arizona Diamondbacks, so I'm not totally against him either. I feel like he could definitely add a different element to this team. Tommy Pham, I mean, we've talked about him a lot on our show about, I wasn't crazy about when they signed him, and then he ended up performing really well and then just continued just to badmouth them. I don't think he'd even want to play for us because we're too lazy, so it's not even like he'd want to come back. So, but he can't stop talking about us, which is so strange and take away from his team. But then other than that, I mean, a lot of these other guys, and we've talked about in the past, Bellinger, I feel like he's going to get overpaid elsewhere. I just don't see that being a fit for the Mets right now. I feel like a lot of teams are going to overreact to the year that you have the Cubs. Think you got MVP caliber Bellinger back from his Dodgers days, which is not the case. So I wouldn't be looking at that. Hunter Renfroe is one of those guys that we've talked about a lot as well. We talked about him a lot last year. Another guy, corner outfield, also DH, gives you a lot of power. So basically any combination of that is fine with me. Whether it's Teoscar, Renfroe, to go back to Soler, Peterson, they got to get one of these big-time power corner bats who could also do some DHing, because right now, like we talked about, there is such a lack of power on this team. This is where your sources of power is going to be. Because, again, you're not going to get a shortstop because you have Lindor. You're not going to get a catcher because you have Alvarez. Alonso's covered up first. So the only other real openings is the corner outfield because you have Nimmo in center. So this is where you're going to get your power source. They got to take advantage of that. If you want to be crazy, take a 1-year deal on a Joey Gallo. Again, he technically has power, so you could consider that. I think it'd be a little risky with the whole New York thing. He just got booed so badly with the Yankees. I feel like there'd just be so much pressure for him to walk into. But in that, you have your trade guys. Obviously, we talked about Juan Soto earlier. We've talked about Santander on our show plenty of times. We all love him. He'd be awesome. We talked about Eloy Jimenez last year. I mean, there's definitely a lot of good options here. I find it hard for the Mets to mess this up because, I've been of the mindset that I think they really need 2 corner outfielders.
It's not a threat or a challenge.
Yeah, no. So I just feel that Starling Marte, his health scares me too much. I definitely would be trying to get 2 of these outfielders. So that's the kind of approach the Mets got to take. Definitely one of those power guys, and then maybe want to get someone that can move around a little bit like a Gurriel. I think that's how they should approach this.
I think this is the deepest area to address here of guys that I would 100% bring in to fill in the outfield spot. Ibby, I'll go to you for outfield. What do you think here?
I mean, a lot of the stuff that Frank just said, it's hard not to echo a lot of it. Me looking at the list, some of the names that interest me at least, or what I think, Stearns might go about attacking. Obviously, the power is a need, so I'm with Frank there. And I'm also with him when he says, I just mentioned on our show last week too, talking about how I'm going into the season thinking that we have one outfielder. We have Brendan Nimmo. Like, I do not look at this as I'm getting anything from Starling Marte. I'm not. If you want to tell me, and I think Fangraphs had it where he was projected for 11 home runs and a 260 average. Like, if you want to tell me that that's my 4th outfielder coming off of the bench, getting starts here and there, fine. Because no one's taking the contract, you can't get rid of him. I'll take that. But you cannot plug him and think he's going to be playing right field on a consistent basis. I can't have it. But
right fielder can't hit 11 home runs. That's
right. Exactly. So then talking about names, outfield DH, we mentioned Soler already. We're talking about Teoscar Hernandez. Like, definitely guys that fit. But another thing that I think is definitely going to come into play here, because everything Stearns has said to this point, he's kind of been, telling you the truth of like where, kind of like leaving the tea leaves. Like, you read him and he's kind of sticking to what he's saying. A big buzzword from I think lately has been run prevention. And I think he realizes that he has to prevent runs. So it's as much as we need power, and we do. So you talk about the Teoscars, the Solers, the Hunter Renfroes of the world. I agree with them. Even the trade market for someone like Santander, like, all makes sense. But I wouldn't be shocked if he also is also in that market for another outfielder that is more defensive oriented, that might provide 10 to 12 home runs, but has a strong glove, whether that is someone like a Kiermaier, even though I know over the years his glove has gone down. If he goes after someone like a Jason Hayward, like maybe that's something he wants to do because he's strong defensively, and you add on to that by getting another power outfielder to kind of counteract that. Because let's be honest, we cannot go into this season with the likes of DJ Stewart and Starling Marte getting, a lot of reps, if you will, in any of the outfield spots, because not knowing what the pitching is going to be, you have to have sharp defense, which is why I think Stearns has been so adamant about run prevention, because he's not sure what he's going to be having on the mound. So whatever is getting hit out, you got to be able to make sure you can catch it.
Yeah, I mean, the run prevention note that he emphasized, I mean, it does explain the whole talks about Manuel Margot. Obviously, I actually forgot to add that there. But Andrew, I mean, we've
how many more fucking years are we gonna get Manuel Margot to the Mets? Ever since it was Syndergaard, DeGrom, like you had Hedges and Margot. I am so sick and tired of this fucking guy being linked to the Mets. And yes, he's a great defender, whatever.
He's the new Marte.
He's the new Marte. No, it
won't last forever.
But he only, again, maybe this is the good thing, because this guy fucking kills the Mets when he plays us. Like he's hitting he can't hit anybody else, but he plays the Mets. He turns into fucking Ted Williams and fucking Ronald Acuna had a kid.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Let's test out the Wilson Ramos theory again. Let's do that.
Exactly. Yeah, let's run that back. But I mean, yes, they need. Again, they need to have the priority of and if you get anything out of Starling Marte, is a bonus. You need to have the two guys, and like I said, there's 1,000 options here. Obviously, Santander and Renfroe would be my kind of guys. I mean, if you're looking at that defensive first outfielder for the trade market, first of all, I'm not talking to Tampa Bay because you're going to lose that deal. First of all, hang the damn phone up. Just if I'm going that, I'd rather just go get Dylan Carlson, a switch hitting bat who's hit left-handed pitching. If we're just going strictly defensive, that's the thing. I'd rather take Carlson on. He's younger, switch hitting bat who hits left-handed pitching, who still has upside. Where Margot is pushing 30, you know what the hell he is. Yes, he's a good defender, but the power obviously needs to be the priority. But again, if run prevention is that kind of deal, maybe we're all saying maybe Soler, maybe even the DH position comes into run prevention where it's he gets his DH who's flexible enough to play different positions to get guys off the field. So there's plenty. And like Frank said, I mean, it's a challenge for the Mets not to screw this up. But again, it's the Mets. They'll end up with Jesse Winker and Manuel Margot as your corner outfielders. And they're going to bank on Starling Marte turning back to that 2021 form. And we're all screwed. But that's the old Mets. Maybe Stearns says something different. But again, there's too many solid options on the market in both the free agent and the trade market to really screw it up. And if the only time that they're going to do it, if they're banking on Marte because of that contract next to his number, or his number next to his name.
The only thing I'll throw real quick when it comes to Margot, it never made sense to me straight up. The only time it ever made sense is if you're telling me you're trading me Margot on top of Tyler Glasnow, I'm eating $35 million and I'm giving up less to take on all of that money. That's the only way it makes sense. Straight up, he's making $10 million. I can find someone cheaper doing the same thing. I just going out on the market. So that's why that never made sense to me outside of him being in a deal with Glasnow.
Yeah, there was a prospect the Mets were attached to from the Rays at the trade deadline, Jonathan Aranda, who has a lot of upside, who if they were to put him in that deal, I wouldn't mind that. If they got another piece along with a guy like Margot, I wouldn't mind it. Dylan Carlson, Frank, he had the comparisons to Carlos Beltran just a few years ago. Does that intrigue you?
Honestly, I like any of those St. Louis options because, like Andrew said, they're all younger. They have athleticism. They can actually move around the outfield. I'm good with any of the combinations. Carlson, Newbar, Tyler O'Neill. I mean, all those guys have speed, and we know this team could use that. I mean, this team, like we said, needs to get younger, needs to get more athletic. They give you the combination of power and defense. And, with trade-offs, like we said, St. Louis, every now and then, they make the weird trades, especially with their outfielders. I mean, it actually started with Tommy Pham and then, Randy Arozarena. So, they've done it plenty of times in the past. So I'm good with any of those guys from St. Louis as well. I mean, I don't think that's going to happen. I feel that's not going to be – if the Mets are making trades, I don't think that's where it's going to happen. But I'm not against it. If for somehow they struck out on all of these guys in free agency, then you can technically explore it. But I think there's plenty of free agency options that you could get these guys without it, having to cost your prospects making a trade. And I think even a guy like Teoscar and Hunter Renfroe, they actually give you pretty good defense compared to a Soler and even a Jock Peterson. I mean, Hunter Renfroe, his arm alone makes him a very good defender because of the intimidation factor. Like, you don't want to run on Hunter Renfroe. Like, you don't make that mistake. And again, because him and Teoscar can move around a little bit, they actually can give you some run prevention compared to someone like DJ Stewart.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about what was I actually going to say? I mean, yeah, talking about these like more athletes in the outfield, it's possible that the Mets go towards that direction. And, there might be some people debating that, yeah, Marte is a great athlete. Yes, but he's 35 years old. And that's the thing. We just don't know what we're going to get from him. Yeah. And then that's the thing. Like, we just don't know what's going to go on with his lower half. Like, maybe we will see him on the field, but like, if his entire lower half is compromised, what is he going to provide run prevention for? So, he's done it before, but he's 35. Like, you're talking about a 35-year-old Marte here. Like, you're not talking about a 31-year-old Marte or a 28-year-old Marte.
It's not just the age; it's also in addition to coming off the surgeries.
And I know it might seem harsh that we're just going after Marte here. Of like, okay, he's coming off an all-star season in 2022. Maybe it's just a down year, but like, you're giving him $20 million a year. He's had a double groin surgery. He's banged up, and you just don't know what you're going to get out of him. I mean, it's just the future of what he could do compared to, I mean, what he's done so far.
A baseball player is. Yeah, a baseball player is, usually the stronger the core on a baseball player, the more power, the more it just adds to your overall game. When you sap that area from a player, it's going to really take away what they really offer. So are you getting $20 million worth out of Starling Marte anymore? I doubt it. So it's like, I can't bank on him providing really anything.
That's the thing. I hear that argument of a DH. You're going to give $20 million to a DH. I mean, he's going to play. He's going to be he might be a fourth outfielder. I mean, you're giving $20 million to a fourth outfielder
for 11 home runs, right?
Yeah, that's the thing.
I said before, a right fielder can't hit 11 home runs. DH can't hit 11 home runs. What are we doing?
Our DH can't hit 11 home runs.
Our DH was hitting 11 home runs.
Our DH.
I know he has to be on this team.
I think.
Yeah, I know he has to be on this team because of his age and because of his contract and his age and everything. Like, he's locked into this
he's
team.
here. Yeah.
But, you have to look at him. It's like, the Mets under the Wilpons did this with David Wright once he started dealing with his back issue. Every year it was like, we're not going to get a third baseman. We're not going to get a third baseman. We won't get a third. It's like, dude, you probably need to get somebody who can play third base if David Wright's not going to be healthy. And I think what they need to do is they need to go out and they need to get an outfield. And then if Starling Marte is healthy, you figure it out. If Starling Marte is good, well, guess what? Then you have another good player. And I don't think that's a problem. Like, I don't understand the logic here. Like, I think you need to go out and get as many, again, from this list. This is the sexiest list of all the lists that we've looked at so far in terms of free agent options, trade options. Like, there's a lot here that the Mets can do. Go do some of it. Would I like it to be, Soto and Soler? Yeah, that'd make me really happy if they went and, did that. But it doesn't even have to be. It doesn't have to be that. You guys made so many compelling arguments. There's, I think it's Shay in the comments has said a few times, Max Kepler makes sense, who nobody brought up.
Yes.
I like Randy Arozarena. I'm not sure how available he is. We talked a little bit about Luis Robert Jr. Like, there are people here you could get. Go get them. Go get some of these people. Like, just make it happen.
Yeah. And for those of you wondering, I saw somebody ask it. I don't know where it went, but Taylor is not Chris Taylor. It's Michael A. Taylor, who came off actually a really good year with Minnesota. 22 home runs. I wonder how he did that. Anything else for the outfield? I think we can just move to the middle infield because I'm just going to talk about it as just as a whole, because I think we all know who the shortstop is going to be unless something crazy happens. Actually, I don't have that here. Hold up. Oh, sorry. Wait, there we go. Okay. So middle infield, obviously it's more of second base, but maybe there is a possibility you bring in a backup shortstop or something like that. I don't know. Because Luis Guillorme is gone. You gotta fill that massive value. So Francisco Lindor, obviously your top guy, gonna be here forever, whether you like it or not. Shove it at this point. Jeff McNeil, of course, at second base. You have Ronnie Mauricio played a little bit of second base. We haven't even mentioned Zach Short, who is going to be a huge contributor for this team. Luis Angel Acuna and Jet Williams as possible prospects that might make their major league debut. We don't know. Again, and then there's some trade options out there. I've seen Jonathan India attached to the Mets a few times, but nothing really solid there. And then your stories, of course. McNeil refusing to get surgery, Lindor getting surgery after a 30-30 season, and all of that stuff. John, I'll start with you with the middle infield of how they address this.
This is kind of the area that concerns me the least right now.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of that is Lindor. You've got the shortstop. Lindor does so many things well. And if you've got a really good shortstop and you've got the center fielder, going back to our last slide, and you've got the catcher now, the Mets are shaping up to be strong up the middle, which is an old cliche that I think still holds a lot of water. Mm-hmm. So now you look at the other side and you look at second base. Look, I've got my problems with Jeff McNeil, as does a lot of people here. But I think you could do worse than Jeff McNeil. I would try to trade Jeff McNeil because I think his deal is friendly enough and attractive enough where you can move some things around and get younger and more athletic. But if they're with Jeff McNeil for another year and he's the primary second baseman, I'm not going to riot in the streets. This is not a Daniel Vogelback getting reps situation. This is a guy who, you have to be concerned that 2 out of the last 3 years he had severely down years. I've said on our show that if Jeff McNeil is not hitting a minimum of 310, he is a useless offensive player, and I stand by that. But I don't think he's going to hit as poorly as he did this season. I don't know if he'll ever win a batting title again, so I think you could do worse. Beyond him, I think you do have the possibility of Ronnie Mauricio playing second base in some iteration. And they are, again, I'm not sure what Acuna is. I'm not sure what Jet Williams is. I know people are high on them, some people not as much. But you do have people waiting in the wings. It's kind of the one area where even if things go catastrophically wrong at second base, you have people that you can continue to reach down and go get and at least stem the tide or at least see what they have, because guys like Acuna are super close. And again, Jet Williams is rising quickly and Mauricio's already up here. So, to me, I don't know that they need to do a ton outside of getting somebody who can back up shortstop. And at that point, maybe you look at a guy like maybe it's a guy like a Joey Wendell. Maybe it's a Nick Ahmed, although Nick Ahmed's, defense has gone down year after year after year. But, you look at a guy who's not an absolute zero with the bat the way Guillorme was and can play some shortstop and play some second base. And dare I say it, if he can play some third base too, that's great. So, to me, you're looking at a backup player here more than anything else. And so, I want somebody who's better than Guillorme, but I think there are a lot of options on this list that would give you better production than Guillorme. So I think it's another one where it's kind of hard to mess this up.
Yeah, I do think it's more of a bench thing. And obviously it's just more of just the fact that you have so much stability with Francisco Lindor, where he's just been out there every single day. I mean, he's going to be playing 160 games, but he is going to be 30 next year. That means that he's full on washed, and that's it's going to be a problem. Everybody's going to be screaming at him, and they're going to be wanting to trade off that contract. But I mean, I don't know if there's I don't know if there is a creative way of how they address this, because the way that I see it is the only way that they do anything with second base or the middle infield is if they are shopping Jeff McNeil. And that's something I would push, obviously. But Ibby, anything here?
No, I mean, even if, to just continue your point right there, even if they were shopping a Jeff McNeil, like I said before, I think that this team has has a glut of middle infield types that, depending on how you fill out the rest of this roster, they might put themselves in a spot where if they did get rid of a Jeff McNeil, they might be willing to try out, one of these younger players coupled with a lower end potential starter from this list, not spending a lot of money, a veteran type just to fill in for a little bit to then allow or see if one of their prospects can, come along and provide. But yeah, this is an area, to echo John's point before, this is an area where I just feel that I feel a lot more confidence in, as opposed to other ones where I haven't really thought that much about attacking anything in this area because, like I said before, you have Francisco Lindor and you have a bunch of talented players or talented prospects that you feel highly about. Then it's eventually you're going to get to a point where you have to let them give them some ride, and I think we're at a point now with Stearns, at least I hope, where we're not going to be running out the likes of dead end type players like the Vogelbacks of the world, and still and would rather be allowing these upside type players to get reps and see if they can provide, so we don't have another Mark Vientos situation where he gets limited playing time and then you finally give him playing time at the end of the year that's consistent and he's hitting the ball, he's driving the ball all over the park, he's hitting home runs. It's like, well, you gave the guy finally some consistency in his everyday routine and he's providing. It's a shocking thing when you allow someone to just be in a spot and go. So we'll see what happens in that sense, but I'm not too worried about this spot. And if they do try to add to it, I'm thinking more so on the lower end.
I also just want to say I like Jonathan India. Like, I find him to be an intriguing player. I don't think he's as good as his rookie year was, but I just don't see how he's a fit or a need.
Well, that was also his only good year. His rookie year was like his only good year when you really look at it. Everyone brings him up so much because his father's a Mets fan. Like that's the one thing I can't stand, where it's like, oh, his father's a Mets fan. Oh, he grew up on Long Island. Oh, he grew up. It's like all these different things for different types of players. Like it wears on me because it's like, just because you like the Mets doesn't mean you have to play for the Mets, like, or anything like that.
It just doesn't seem like a fit. He's the kind of guy that would be intriguing to me if, again, they were, wow, the Mets are just, their depth chart is empty at second base and India's available. I'm like, well, yeah, he's younger and more athletic and theoretically more talented than some people we have now. Then sure, I would investigate that, but I don't see how he's a fit other than what Ibby said, which is just like, oh yeah, sure. His dad's a Mets fan.
His dad watches the games. Yeah, it's great.
Cool. So does my dad. Can I play second base? Like, what?
Yeah. I mean, India, I think the hitting profile for him, I think is good for a second baseman, like the typical second baseman. I like the profile better than Jeff McNeil. Jeff McNeil's like the second base profile out of like every second baseman I hate the most. But I mean, if I were to look at it again, like, I get it with McNeil, and listen, he's had great seasons before, hitting over 300 for multiple years in his career. The problem with this is that, okay, sure, if he gets a batting title, he comes back, gets a batting title. I don't care. Like, the only accolade that I actually care about is a ring. Like, that's all I really give a shit about at the end of the day. Like, it's fun to see these types of things. But again, we've come to a point where it's like, you're going for a batting title? Great. I don't care. Like, I don't care. I don't need to see the rate that you hit singles. Like that I don't really care about that at this point. And listen, that's just me. And I think that it's just outdated. It's a guy they need to move on from, in my opinion. He's going to be 32 years old. He's got a messed up elbow now. I don't know how much that did affect him, but he didn't play well, so it must have affected him somehow. But
when you have a lineup like this, it doesn't help to have a Jeff McNeil. If you want a Jeff McNeil in a lineup that has 6 hitters that are hitting 20 homers a year or more, then having a Jeff McNeil sprinkled in is fine, because he can just go in there, slap the ball around, and everyone else does all the heavy lifting. But when you, like you said before, when you have Jeff McNeil at times batting 4th, batting 5th, protecting your best hitter, it's not a good thing when he's just slapping the ball around when you're trying to generate offense. Basically, he's trying to put the quarter in the merry-go-round, but the rest of that merry-go-round doesn't work.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I mean, we were talking before about, going from, if your lineup was Nimmo, Lindor, Soto, Alonso, Soler, McNeil can bat 9th or 8th in that lineup, and I'm not going to be upset about it. But, people keep talking about, teams are too home run happy and teams are too pull happy and all this stuff. It's like, well, I kind of wish the Mets were. I wish the Mets understood
that's
the
how
value
you
of the home
win,
run.
folks.
Yeah, I wish they understood the value of the home run. The Mets aren't maybe the Mets aren't home run happy. The Mets have hitters who can't hit home runs. So it looks pathetic. Like, you know what I mean? So you're like, that guy's up there trying to hit a home run. Well, you know what? It looks a lot different if Jock Peterson is trying to hit a home run, or at least Guillorme is trying to hit a home run. It's just not.
I hate that they tried to turn Mark Canha into a power hitter. God damn it. What else do you expect us to do? Like, that's the thing. It's like, yeah, it's all Jeremy Barnes' fault. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe he benefits from having Chavez back, but I don't know. That's another thing. But I don't even know what to say anymore. I've had enough of this. Like, I really have had enough of this, of these pieces that are just like good at one thing. They have one tool, and like, listen, if he's so valuable, as some Mets fans say, that he can play so many goddamn positions, then fucking trade him. Then trade him then. If he has so much value, trade him. Frank, if you want to add to this, I mean, this is your...
No, I mean, if anything, I look at it more from a sense of if the Mets are going to do something in this area, I look at more in that utility role, replacing Luis Guillorme, because right now, we're talking about the potential of Ron Mauricio. Earlier, we're talking about maybe being the starting third baseman. He can't be the starting third baseman and also be playing a lot of second base. So the Mets do need to find that true backup infielder. And that's where you look at, the guys like the Jonathan Scope, even a guy like Adalberto Mondesi, MLB The Show legend. He came off the injury, but there's a guy who, when healthy, man, he could swipe a lot of bags. And, that's another nice piece to have off the bench, who's making some starts for you every now and then. And you can bring him in late in games, steal a base, get a guy in scoring position, make things happen. So he would give you some options. Obviously, I talked about Joey Wendell last year. I feel like he, as a backup, he definitely could provide some value for you. Again, do we want to actually get Met killers Paul DeYoung? I mean, he actually had a decent year all in all, but, we've talked so much about, like, with Manuel Margot. Does a Met killer actually become a good Met? Still haven't seen it yet, but that's kind of the way I would approach this. I think as far as Jonathan India, I feel like Cincinnati values him more as a starting caliber player, and effectively look more for starting caliber trade packages, which right now he wouldn't be a starter on the Mets. So I don't think that should really be a priority for the Mets right now. Again, unless, like everyone said, if they did actually go ahead and trade Jeff McNeil. So for me, I just kind of look at it as more as who could actually give me the most versatility off the bench. And if someone did get hurt and I needed them to make some starts every now and then, am I okay with them in the lineup and it's just not an automatic out like the way Luis Guillorme was? That's all you really look for at this point. As far as, if they started, can they still get by and not totally kill you? I mean, that's all they really need from this area of the team.
Yeah, this is a point that was just brought up. And listen, I don't know if this is true, just like off the top of the head, but McNeil saying that McNeil had a 20 home run pop, then decided not to hit for exit velocity. If that is the case, if that is true, fuck Jeff McNeil. But it's simple.
I know we all know this, and I'm sure the commenter knows this too, but exit velocity does not necessarily mean exiting the ballpark velocity. Sometimes McNeil hits at a exit velocity on like a slap single that is just embarrassing to Major League Baseball players. Like, I don't want, like, I'm not impressed by your 45-mile-an-hour hit over the shortstop's head. Like,
well, it doesn't sustain to much. Like, that's the thing. No. Like, it's at high percentages. Sometimes it'll happen. Like, it's not like it's guaranteed, but it's at high percentages that we're talking about here. And I think that's kind of the direction that Stearns is going in.
I don't want to dig on Jeff McNeil here for like outside of but I do want to.
Oh, we can keep going.
Well, he also makes his bat to ball skills that everybody lauds are almost a detriment to him sometimes because he makes too much contact. So he makes weak contact a lot because he doesn't walk and he's not in positions. And I'm not going to sit here and say the walk is all important, but like he makes a lot of weak contact because he makes contact a lot of the time. And for the people who are like strikeouts strikeouts are strikeouts and they're the worst thing you could do. Well, sometimes dribbling into a double play is worse than a strikeout. And Jeff McNeil does a lot of that.
Yeah. Yep. Strikeouts are subjective, people. I'm telling you, that's just how it is. That you're facing high profile velocity these days. If he can't catch up to it, he can't catch up to it. And listen, he's 32 years old. He's not getting any younger. So, I mean, listen, I would say move on from him, but you know what? We'll see what they have in store. If Stearns moves on for him, I'm building a statue for him. But again, I don't think we have anything else to really address here. I think that's pretty much it. I guess we'll take in some comments, I guess, for like the next 5-ish minutes. Any questions that anybody in the chat? There's a lot of you in here. Thank you for those of you who tuned in. Make sure to check out both podcasts. All the links are in the description for everybody individually, all the podcasts and everything. For those of you who have any questions, like Tommy Edman, is that somebody that maybe we consider? Andrew, you're shaking your head. You can elaborate if you want.
We have one of those. His name's Jeff McNeil. Like, I get it, he's a great defender. Like, he's a better defender than McNeil, and he can play the outfield.
But McNeil's got a batting title. He doesn't.
He doesn't, exactly. So he's a shittier version of Jeff McNeil. I don't need more of these guys. But if this is, again, a guy that Stearns has seen a lot of, and if this is the big run prevention utility piece, because he can give you the ability, he can play center field, he can play each corner, he can play every infield position. So if he's the wait, what? He steals bases.
He has a lot of speed too.
So I mean, if he's the utility piece, sure. Then Jeff McNeil needs to be sent to fucking Hong Kong. But I'm not, we got Tommy Edman for Tyler McGill, sure. But like, I'm not going nuts about. Again, I'm calling St. Louis, Gorman, Nootbaar, Carlson. There's about 5 guys, offensive pieces I'd call before I'm saying, hey, can I get Tommy Edman?
Yeah, it's a great point.
Tommy Edman's not the top guy. Yeah.
I think if they trade Jeff McNeil, it make like a guy like Edman makes sense because then he becomes your utility guy. Like
he's younger too. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's younger, he's more versatile, he's more athletic. But I think if you have both of them on the team, you're like, what are you doing? What kind of a team are you trying to build? Are you trying to build a baseball team for 1940?
That's kind of like the same like measure of when we had Guillorme and Mendick here at the same time. Like there was like no reason for that to be a thing. Obviously they weren't like competing or anything, but again, and listen, like I understand that the hit on McNeil and everything, whatever, his job is to get on base. Now, again, here's another point that I'm going to give you. I understand getting on base. It's an efficient way. I get it. The Moneyball. Everyone loves Moneyball. Great movie. It was also 20 years ago. Games changed a lot. It has changed a lot since then. It's not 2002 anymore. So listen, I'm just going to tell you, it's the StatCast era. It's a lot different now. Matt Chapman, I think we already covered him a little bit. I think it's just like the opportunity to get him. It's just like, I feel like it's just passed by at this point. Boris Client, he's going to ask for a 6-year deal, 5-year deal, something like that.
Ups and downs too extreme.
Yeah, he does have the ups and downs. I don't like what the Blue Jays did with him. I don't like what they do with any of their hitters. They're hitting. I think their hitting coordinators need to be fired. But I'm not a Blue Jays fan, so who gives a shit?
I think to your point, you said it earlier. I think there was a window to get Matt Chapman a couple of years ago instead of getting Escobar, and they didn't do that. The same way I thought there was a window for the Mets. I talked about it on our show. I said, hey, heading into this past season, I said, if the Mets aren't going to get Aaron Judge, I would take a 1-year flyer on Cody Bellinger. Get Cody Bellinger here 1 year. I think he's primed for a bounce back. They're changing some of the shift rules. I think he's a good change of scenery candidate. Now, I'm not going to give Cody Bellinger a 7-year deal today, this offseason, the same way I'm not going to give Matt Chapman a 7-year deal. So I think there was a window for that player, and I think that window closed in both of those instances. And just real quick, back to the McNeil's job to get on base. Again, how often does he really get on base, though? When you look at it, I said it earlier, unless he's hitting over 300, I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I apologize for bringing this up without having it. But like, I would love to know what McNeil's on base percentage is in years where he doesn't hit 310 or more. I bet you it's not great. I bet you he's an on base guy who is highly predicated on his ability to hit over 300.
Yeah, the down years, 2021 was 319, and then last year was 333. I mean, it's nothing like fantastic impressive. I mean, it's just, listen, the put the ball in play at an exit velocity of 60 miles an hour. Yes, it may work a few times, but it's not going to sustain to anything. And especially with the shift gone, you got to pull the fucking ball. I mean, it's just, that's literally how it is. And, you know, even when he makes quality of contact, he doesn't pull it because he doesn't have the bat speed, and it's not going to get any better. He's 32 years old. I mean, that's literally it. Chapman can't hit. Chapman can hit, but he's a streaky hitter. That's what he's known for.
If this fan base is bitching about Pete Alonso, they would fucking destroy Matt Chapman. Yeah. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, Matt Chapman's something that could go wrong. It could go wrong. Because there's times when you want to pull your hair out with Matt Chapman, but you know, I don't. Again, the strikeouts are measured in chases and whiffs, and that's, you know, he doesn't chase as much. He whiffs a lot. That's just how it is. But what they did with him in Toronto, don't even get me started. They ruined a fantastic upside power hitter. But that's just it. I mean, thoughts of the Aaron Nola deal? You have done that? I mean, I'm just trying to like put in the extra notes here, and then we'll pretty much wrap it up.
I have a question for all you guys. We just bounce it around the room. Not what you think the Mets will do, but your ideal offseason for the Mets, knowing, of course, that Rome wasn't built in a day. They have a lot of holes. They're not going to be able to solve everything in one offseason. But we talked about a lot of potential moves, some trades, some things that are savvy, some things that are gutsy, obviously some signings. So, like, if you had to pick, like, you know, I want these 3 or 4 players or whatever the case is, like, what is your ideal offseason for the Mets?
Frank?
Yeah, I think definitely number one, the trade for one of those starting pitchers. That's priority number one for me. Whether that is, like we talked about, the Burns, the Glass now, or, you know, Dylan Cease, whoever. I mean, getting one of those pitchers, I think, is the top priority. The next thing, getting that power, like we talked about, corner outfield DH bats, so whether that's the Soler, Teoscar, Hunter Renfroe, Jock Peterson, one of those guys is great. I want to take a flyer on one of those starting pitchers under 30 as far as getting those as a piece of your rotation. I think that's important. And then the other thing also with pitching is having that innings here, even if that's a veteran, just a guy who you know is going to make that start for you every 5 days, can eat things, especially if you do end up with a Yamamoto or someone like that, that does have to get used to that different workload that Senga had to adjust to too. I think that's got to be their priorities to me as far as where I'm spending and what they need the most.
Andrew, who are your top priorities?
I mean, I guess got to say Yamamoto. I guess the first one, Jorge Soler, because obviously for the DH spot, and then Brian Wu for Jeff McNeil.
Okay, you love the Brian Wu for McNeil. That's a good one. I haven't heard that from anybody else. It's a good one. I like it.
I mean, Logan Gilbert was a possibility for like a second, but I think that window's kind of closed, hasn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, yeah.
They would probably a batting champion.
A batting champion.
Ibby?
Looking at it, I mean, off the top of my head, obviously Yamamoto, I've been saying on our show for the longest time that should have been the number one target. It's still mine as well. It makes too much sense with this team's trajectory, 25 years old, I think my offseason really is predicated off of that. If you get him, great. I would love to have him. We talked about Soler. Would love to get that power into the lineup. Just, again, bettering themselves when it comes to the upside and searching, however Stearns does that for the bullpen. And to Frank's point before, just an innings eater. Like, this team desperately needs innings. And I don't care about the age in that sense, because it's all about, you know, understanding that it's going to take more than one off season to fix this team. And if I can have someone like a Kyle Gibson, if I can have on a respectable deal, if it was like 4 years and 4 or 5 or whatever it may be, for an Eduardo Rodriguez, which and we didn't really talk about him that much, but like I said, he averages in his career about 185 innings. Lefty has good stuff. I think he would work here, but just going after it in that sense and just really understanding in general. And this is me talking to all Mets fans, that it's not all going to get fixed this offseason. It's going to take some time, but there are definite pieces that you could get this year, that being the Yamamotos, the Solairs, like pieces that you can plug in to better the overall environment of this team, where you can build and become even better the subsequent seasons that follow. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like one step at a time type of person. So I mean, I would just Yamamoto is the guy I'm just fully going for. And I hope that the pivot is going to the trade market right after you get Yamamoto or don't get Yamamoto. So if Yamamoto signs elsewhere, I think you have to go to the trade market, try to get Burns, try to get Glasnow. If you consider Cease an ace or something like that, I don't want to see them say, okay, our pivot from Yamamoto is Jordan Montgomery. That's not my and that's not a hit on Jordan Montgomery or anything. I think he's a great pitcher, but I need to see another frontline arm next to Senga.
Yeah.
And whether it is Glasnow, a trade for Glasnow, whether that is getting Yamamoto, who you believe can be that for many years to come, I want to see that's what they do there. And I also want to see them get a legitimate number 3 as well. And just solidify that number 3, because I mean, that's pretty much what you need in a playoff series if you are, contending in that way. And you got to trade for one and sign for one. And that's how I think the Mets need to address it. I mean, if they're signing Yamamoto, you trade for Mitch Keller or whatever. If you're signing for if you sign Jordan Montgomery, you trade for Glasnow. I mean, like that's what I mean. Like, one of them has to be a trade. One of them has to be a signing. The rest of it can be 1 year prove it deals. Something can happen, but Yamamoto, 100% the number 1 priority. And then again, like I said, there's so much depth in that outfield / can be a DH market that, again, they just can't screw that up. There's just no way they can screw that up. Mets have surprised us before, but under the hands of David Stearns, I'm going to trust him on this one.
Yeah,
but
I like all that. I mean, I'm with you guys. We've talked about it a lot at the beginning of the show. To me, Yamamoto is priority 1, 2, 3. And again, I said what I said before about how there's no guarantee with him, right? There's going to be growing pains. We saw it with Senga. There's no guarantee he comes over here and is a top ace above aces. But when you're the Mets and looking where they're trying to go and what they're trying to build, he's 25 years old, and 25-year-old pitchers with that kind of ability and that kind of resume and that kind of stuff do not become free agents, like, ever. So go out, sign him, and pair him with Senga and move forward from there. Apart from that, I'm obviously with you on a lot of what you guys said, but I also I want to see this team be more talented, more younger, more fun to watch, right? And obviously you can't always go and get those players. Some of those players do have to develop, right? Whether it's Acuna or Jet Williams or somebody who comes up, or if it's Mauricio, I like the spark of the young player, and it's nice to see those guys. And yeah, if we can get our hands on one, or that's great. If we can develop one, that's great too. I don't really even care where they come from. I'm not a prospect hugger. I would trade any of these prospects in the right deal, but you know what? I'm going to be over the moon if Jet Williams becomes a really exciting player that we can watch and root for, or Drew Gilbert does that, whatever. So I just want to see the Mets get younger and more talented and more athletic. I think that's important, because we watched an old, boring, not modern baseball team last year, and that was frustrating. And honestly, in the Cohen era, we've had some, this kind of boom and bust or whatever, but before Cohen got here, before Stearns got here, we've watched collectively a lot of old, boring, uninterested, not modern, untalented teams, and I'm tired of watching that. I don't want to watch. I want to watch a modern baseball team play modern baseball.
Yeah. It's pretty straightforward there. I think that at this point, I say it all the time. It just has to get younger, and whether it comes off the trade market, whether it comes off of free agency, guys with upside that have the profile of a winning formula, that being power, that being velocity, stuff like that. And the Mets just need to, they need to shift to that. And hopefully David Stearns is the guy that gets them there. I hope so. I really, really hope so, because I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not trying to think negative. If he's not the guy, who is? Like that? That's how I look at it, because we've talked about it ever since Cohen bought the team. I mean, if it doesn't happen in the next few years, who is going to be the guy to do it? Because David Stearns has been talked about for a long time. He's highly regarded. I think he's going to do fine. I think it's going to be a little bit longer of a process than a lot of Mets fans are expecting. But as you look at it right now, you have 12 open spots. I saw somebody in the chat say that we had 13 open spots. I don't know if they got rid of some. Maybe Drew Smith's gone. I don't know. But I mean, if you look at it right now, they have tons of spots open right now, and there's tons of flexibility. There's tons of financial flexibility right now, and I'm happy that in this current situation, I trust that Stearns will make the right decisions. I have not fully disagreed on anything so far. There's only been some light things that I'm like, okay, what are we doing here? But I understand the reasoning behind it. But other than that, I think we're going to close it off right here. Make sure to go subscribe to Til Mets Do Us Parts YouTube. Didn't that happen in your...
That happened to the
I don't
show
know
again.
what the hell just happened.
I don't know. I didn't do anything. You saw.
I don't know
did that on
what
purpose.
just happened.
Is it like?
I don't know.
Is it
He
like
just got
balloons and fireworks? Let me
Balloons
ask you a
this
question.
time.
I've never seen that.
I'm old. I think I'm the oldest person in this stream because I'm older than Nibby.
Well, Frank's about, he saw a dinosaur, so, I think he got beat.
we have a running joke of how we don't know what Frank's age is, and it's never been revealed, and we
Fair
assume that he's 85 years old. Like that's
Fair
all.
enough. I just want to say, I don't know if I'm doing that. I don't know if that's like a react because I made gestures, but I don't know what I'm doing. My hands were up here. I didn't do it on the computer. I don't know what happened. I don't know.
I have no idea. Maybe you have some kind of surprise birthday or something, like just out of nowhere.
I'm keeping my
I don't
hands
know.
firmly in the stream from now on.
Yeah, I have no idea what just happened, but we're going to end it right there before any other acid trips start.
And it was some fun.
But other than that, yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in to this live stream. 2.5 hours, past 2.5 hours. For those of you who have not liked the stream, make sure to go do it. Like it on both channels because it is on both. Make sure to go subscribe to each YouTube channel. Check out the podcast. You guys do yours every Wednesday. We have ours that premieres out every Tuesday at 4 Eastern, around there. And there won't be one this week, but there will be after. We will have a video. Me and Andrew are going to be recording one about some non-tender guys that the Mets could possibly pick up. And that's pretty much it. Let's go Mets. Trust in David Stearns has been said in the chat, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you guys for coming on. It was great to have you.
Thank you.
And all right. So we'll see you guys. Peace out. All right.